Sorry. That's fun music. Welcome, welcome. It's Friday. You made it. I'm so proud of you. I don't know what you made it through, but I'm assuming it was hell or close to it. Sorry, trying to get my sound adjusted. I don't know why my light's weird today. When Mr. Whitbrook gets here, I'll have him turn the overhead on so it's a little brighter. But welcome. It's Friday. You did it. Unless you work weekends, then you haven't done it. And I feel for you for not getting it done because, I mean, working weekends sucks. As a nurse, I worked a lot of weekends, worked overnights, worked holidays, often volunteered for holidays to make extra money for my family, and we would celebrate holidays later. So I totally feel your pain. So whatever you've made it through this week, I'm proud of you. If you don't mind, close out of the chat if you're watching on the live chat. Close out of the chat and then just pop up and hit that thumbs up. That really helps me in the algorithm. We get like a penny per thumbs up. So it doesn't sound like much, but it's money you don't have to spend and it helps me. And it also helps bring us up in the algorithm so that people can see us. The other thing is sharing is caring, you guys. We do a lot of good, I share a lot of good information on this show. And so share it out with your friends. Additionally, you can go into the description section just below the video, and there will be a place where you can financially support the show either through Venmo, going through puberty, I guess, Venmo, PayPal, or Cash App. And thank you this week to the people who donated. Thank you to my folks who donate every month. No matter how much you donate, it helps. God brings the increase. So, if God's telling you, hey, it wouldn't hurt to help Penny pay some of the bills for this podcast, donate $5 a month. And it really helps. I enjoy seeing those smaller donations come in because over time, those really add up. And I appreciate it. Appreciate the larger donations too. You can also donate in the chat itself. So if you go down to the bottom of the chat, you'll see your little icon and you'll see your message here. Below that, you'll see a $sign. You can hit the $sign. And when you do that, you can make a donation. It'll have you link your card information. My card information is linked. I've never had any issues with Rumble. Their security is very good. But if you're not comfortable with that, you've got Venmo, Cash App, PayPal. Housekeeping done. So if you're watching, one more thing. If you're watching on Roku, I'm told now has the thumbs up. All you have to do is pause the video and then the thumbs up, thumbs down, and the page will come up. And so you hit, I'm pretty sure the page comes up on that one. So hit that thumbs up button. And then you can, if you didn't come here, if you're not a member, you're not a follower and you didn't come here just because I'm in your feed of things you watch, hit that little square that's got my show name in it, and you'll be able to subscribe to the show right from the video without having to search my name. And if you're here and you just haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? All the cool kids have subscribed. Don't you want to be one of the cool kids? I'm just kidding. But anyway, we had such a great week. I went and spent some time with my dad yesterday. He had a bunch of appointments at the VA, and so I went and used my nurse brain to help problem solve some issues that he's having, and that's always gratifying, especially when you can get some things done. And that's what we've been trying to do for a while. So keep praying for everybody who's been praying for Dad's broken femur. Keep praying. It is not healing properly. It's healing very slowly. His nutritional status is not great. And so we're working on that as well. I feel like I'm blowing you guys out of here. And so, yeah, if you could keep praying about that, we really need that bone to heal. The surgery that he would need to have, if he does require surgery for it, has a really poor 5-year survival rate. And so we don't want to have to go that route. So yeah, everybody's been praying about that. I appreciate it. Everybody who's been praying for my family, my son who's getting married, and my daughter who's expecting a baby in July. I appreciate that a ton. And Mr. Whitbrook will be coming in here around 5, and I'll have to tell him about his dinner, but you guys are used to that. So I've got several stories pulled up for us today, and I always try to go for things that you haven't heard, but I did pick up some things that you probably have heard about just to give you the updates on those. So we're going to start. And there was one more note. On Wednesday, we always do book club. And this Wednesday, I did not realize my hospital follow-up appointment is on Wednesday. So book club will be, I want to do it on Thursday. We'll do book club on Tuesday this week. And that's it. That's that. Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. And I'll put up a little reminder for that. We're reading of Mice and Men, and we're on chapter 4. So there's that. I hope you guys are enjoying it. I got a lot of good feedback. It's the first book I've read where I've had to do characters. And so I'm doing the best I can, but folks seem to like it. So let me get to our first story here. And let's slide down here. Give us a second here. Okay. Make sure you can see. There we go. All right. Hard hit by the U.S. opioid crisis, Oregon reconsiders decriminalization. Now, Oregon is becoming a mess. We've got friends that lived out there that moved because it was so dangerous. You couldn't even go in and enjoy or go out to enjoy the reasons that they moved there. And so they had to get out. It's a common sight. This is from Reuters by Deborah Bloom. It's a common sight on the streets of downtown Portland. People in front of stores, trendy restaurants, hotels, on sidewalks, corners and benches, crouched over torchlighters held up to sheets of tin foil or meth pipes. Some drape blankets over their heads or duck behind concrete barriers. Others don't try to hide. All summer long, we were right out in the open. You didn't have to be paranoid anymore. You didn't have to be worried about the cops. You see, we're taking away all of the incentives to stop doing drugs and instead enabling it. And what could go wrong? John Hood is a 61-year-old drug addict living in the streets of Oregon's most popular city. He spoke to Reuters on a downtown Portland corner across from where he had just smoked fentanyl and methamphetamine. And I gotta say, I do well to get everything together for this show and to try to be somewhat helpful to you. I can't imagine trying to do that on fentanyl and methamphetamine. Maybe it would make me better. I'm not going to try it, but that's something. I mean, imagine how highly this person could function if they didn't use those drugs. It was like smoking cigarettes. You just did it. You didn't have to worry about it. Now they're cracking back down. They're wanting to make it illegal. I'm just astounded that we ever went the route of decriminalizing. The whole thing was we were going to decriminalize and then we were going to provide recovery services for all these people. Well, then they figured out they didn't have the resources, the doctors, the facilities to provide recovery services. So now we just have legalized drugs with no criminality and no recovery services, which is exactly what I expected would happen. What's known as Measure 110 was touted as a revolutionary approach, treating addiction as a public health matter, not a crime, which is fine as long as you deal with the public health matter. The skepticism around it comes as cities across America are seeking solutions for a drug crisis. Nationally, the U.S. overdose death toll crossed 100,000 for the first time in 2021. Amid the medical care disruptions of COVID, increased mental health problems, and widespread availability of lethal drugs. What they don't put in there is the state providing the paraphernalia to do the drugs with, safe spaces in which to do drugs, where you'll be given Narcan if you fall into a state where you're not breathing. Now there's not even anything to scare you out of doing them because you can just go right into these facilities and do them. Under Measure 110, instead of arresting drug users, police issue them $100 citations along with a card that lists the number to a hotline for addiction treatment services. How do you think they're even collecting the $100 from homeless people? They're not. They can call in exchange for help dismissing the citation if they go into treatment. The problem is they can't get beds in treatment. Those who simply ignore the citations face no legal ramifications, as I said. State data shows only 4% of people who receive citations call the hotline. And while I agree criminalization of drug abuse has not been very successful, and it's caused all kinds of other fallout, decriminalizing it isn't helping either because they didn't do, as per usual, what they said they were going to do and treat these people. Now facing public pressure amid a surge in overdose deaths, state lawmakers are preparing to vote on recriminalization. I doubt it'll pass. Sometime during the session that started earlier this month. Democrats, who are the state House majority, are pushing for a bill to make a small-scale drug possession a low-level misdemeanor punishable by 30 days in jail, which they won't get. They'll get a ticket that they again will not pay, with the opportunity to seek treatment. Measure 110 garnered support from 58% of voters, including 74% of voters in Portland's Multnomah County. The law that resulted went into effect on February 2021. According to an August survey by Emerson College, 56% of Oregonians support a total repeal of Measure 110. 64% support changes to the law. It's become very, very obvious that what was happening on the streets of Portland and what was happening on Main Street, Oregon, was unacceptable, said State Senate Majority Leader Kate Lieber, a Democrat who chairs the legislature's Addiction Committee. Are you surprised they had to decriminalize it to figure that out? Because I bet we could all sit around a table and discuss this and figure it out without having to decriminalize anything. So anyway, it's basically a nothing bill that's going to do nothing, just like the nothing bills have done nothing up until this point, and it's just fluff to make it look like they're doing anything. If they really wanted to address this problem, they would take all of this money that they're pouring into whatever nonsense they're pouring it into, taking care of people who are not legally in this country, and they would build recovery centers for people. And if you were found doing drugs, it would be mandated that you went for a 2-week to 30-day stay, and you would have to complete that successfully to be allowed to continue to reside in the community. You can't turn your community over to criminals. You just can't. And drug abuse is a criminal action. I lost a cousin to a drug overdose. Well, it wasn't a drug overdose. It was a poisoning. He would have survived the drugs just fine. It was the fentanyl that killed him. And I have no tolerance for the idea that we should just decriminalize all drugs and not put, that's it. They just want to decriminalize it. They don't want to go the steps that are necessary to actually get people off drugs, to push people into situations. If you can't continue living here unless you go to treatment, that's a far bigger incentive to go to treatment than just, we're going to give you a $100 ticket that you're not going to pay anyway. So there's my thoughts on that. You can opine if you feel differently, of course. But that's where I stand on it. Okay, our next story is... this one. Make sure you guys can see. And you can. Awesome. Okay. No, I don't want this. Stop it. Okay. Why the FBI and the CDC took so little interest in a dangerous biolab hiding in plain sight. So we talked last summer, they found this biolab, this illegal biolab operating in California. And what most people have heard to date is they found that somebody was doing just general inspections of the area. She saw a hose coming out of the building, went in to investigate, and found this Chinese-run illegal biolab. And, then what you heard was they shut it down. They're trying to track down who the people are who are involved. And that's pretty much it. And this is a good update. So I wanted to follow with this update. So this is by Adam Gary and Nikos Biggs Karopoulos. There's a Greek name. Staff writers for the Kennedy Beacon. So there's a part 1 of this, and you can Google this story if you want. It's the kennedybeacon.substack.com. So in part 1 of a Kennedy Beacon exclusive series on an illegal biolab in Reedley, California, we spoke with City of Reedley Code Enforcement Officer Jesselyn Harper, who discovered the facility in December 2022 during what she thought was a routine inspection. And then they got a lackluster response from... Oh, come on. I already did that. Okay. So following the discovery of the rogue biolab, officials were told of a potential lab leak when a lab worker confessed during a March 16, 2023 investigation that both he and his children became sick shortly after he began experimenting with the genetically modified mice that were improperly housed at the biolab. This incident occurred at a time when Officer Harper and her colleagues were unable to have any meaningful conversations with CDC officials who continued to ignore and hang up on their calls. We're just coming out of COVID. You find an illegal Chinese-run biolab in Reedley, California, and you hang up on the people who are calling to report it. This is what I'm saying about everybody's talking about biolabs in Ukraine and biolabs in China. They are in your own backyard. You can go to USA Today, biolabs, and then it'll pull up a site for you, and you can put in your own state, and you can see where the legal biolabs are. Those are the ones we know about. Hang on here. And I would encourage you to do that because a lot of people don't realize that they have level 3 and 4 biolabs in their area. Sorry, I need a cough drop. And this is something you need to be aware of because you can FOIA. Like a lot of these are at colleges. And so since colleges receive federal funding, you can FOIA a request and see if there have been any accidents at your lab because they're not required to apparently report this immediately. They report it when they get around to it. And by then the damage can be done. So after California officials refused to refer the pleas of Reedley officials to the CDC, Harper explained to the Beacon, Reedley City Manager Nicole Ziba reached out to her congressman, U.S. Representative Jim Costa. So the state's not helping her at all in her role as an inspector, and she ends up having to go over the head to a congressman. Harper recalls Ziba contacting Costa in early spring 2023. According to Harper, once Representative Costa became involved, she and Ziba no longer had to work with unresponsive state officials in order to get the CDC's attention. What exactly does the CDC do? It's just so frustrating. So Representative Costa's intervention resulted in the CDC conducting an investigation at the lab from May 2nd to the 4th, 2023, almost 5 months after Harper discovered the lab. Harper characterized the CDC's attitude to the problem as one that exuded incompetence. She explained that the flaws in the CDC's approach to the matter were due largely to systemic failures. This is the Center for Disease Control. Literally their only job is preventing diseases, keeping diseases under control. And they can't make this happen. According to Harper, when you get to the state and federal authorities, one of the disconnects I found is they don't have to deal with the residents. They don't have to deal with the people that are here that were genuinely afraid that their water had been contaminated due to the proximity of the lab to a local water supply. Commenting further on the CDC and other federal agencies, Harper said, "The higher up you go in government, there's more of a disconnect of how this affects the actual people around it." So they did a select committee, we got a congressional select committee strategic competition between the report. Anyway, the select committee report found that when the CDC cataloged the numerous pathogens stored at the lab, it did so by examining the labels scribbled on vials rather than by confiscating the substances and conducting tests on the pathogens at a secure facility. So I want you to imagine that. You found this illegal biolab and you pick up a slide and it says Ebola. And you're like, okay, 1 Ebola, COVID, one COVID, measles, 4 measles. And you're taking the word of the scribbling on the containers for this? Are you kidding me? It's like going to a crime scene and saying, "Sir, did you do this?" "Oh, no, absolutely not. Look, I wrote on my chest, innocent." I mean, it's not funny, but come on. Calling the CDC's decision not to conduct tests baffling, the Select Committee's report went on to criticize the agency's actions, saying bluntly that they do not make sense. The report further found it unconscionable that the CDC concluded that the lab's presence was of little concern without taking the time to determine the nature of the pathogens found there. So on November 30th, Mandy Cohen appeared before the House Committee on Energy and Commerce Subcommittee. Good Lord, that's long. During a lengthy session, Representative Morgan Griffith asked Director Cohen why the CDC had refused to answer calls from, and in some cases had hung up on officials from Reedley seeking guidance and assistance on the best way to deal with the illegal biolab. While not directly addressing Griffith's question, of course, about the calls, Cohen defended the CDC's eventual involvement in the matter, specifically emphasizing the 2.5 days that the CDC investigators spent at Reedley not testing samples to see if that's really what was in the samples. It took them 5 months to get out there. If there had been a leak, the damage is done. Harper explained to the Beacon that CDC officials were not present when she and her colleagues discovered the refrigerator. This is the part that's going to really get you. Discovered the refrigerator clearly labeled Ebola. Harper further explained that CDC officials told her they were unable to take action on that refrigerator because the specimens inside it were not labeled Ebola, despite being kept at temperatures consistent with Ebola storage in a refrigerator labeled Ebola. As previously reported in the Beacon, the CDC refused to test any of the bioagents. Returning to Cohen's congressional testimony, issues surrounding the Reedley lab were again raised, this time by Representative Dan Crenshaw from Texas, who asked why it took so long for the CDC to respond to red flags from local officials. Cohen continued to defend the agency, blah, blah, blah. He said that there were no evidence of select agents at the biolab. So if you guys have followed me any length of time, I have told you anytime the government uses the words no evidence, always put after that, because we didn't look. There's no evidence that the COVID vaccines cause problems with fertility because we didn't do studies to see if they cause problems with fertility. There's no evidence that the COVID vaccines cause myocarditis because we did those studies and hid them. There's no evidence that the COVID vaccines cause immune deficiency because we didn't study that. On and on and on. So the reason they didn't find select agents is because they didn't want to find select agents. And the question is, why? Why? I guarantee you if I was running that biolab, my butt would be nailed to a wall. They would figure it out. I mean, I'd have a colonoscopy. That's how thorough the searching would be. But you have to wonder who the people are that own this lab and why is the government deciding not to look into anything? It doesn't make any sense. It's witthealthcoaching.com, Brian. What did I type, honey? Hold on. Let me see these. Oh, look. Maybe I cut it off or something. What did I do? Silly me. Hi, Tennessee woman. Here we go. So following Crenshaw's questions, Representative Neil Dunn continued to raise issues surrounding the biolab with Director Cohen. Reading from the Select Committee's report, Dunn told Cohen that the presence of the lab potentially endangered the safety of millions of Americans. Dunn then accused the CDC of completely failing the people of Reedley and criticized the agency for not responding to the issue until months after it was first raised by local officials. Dunn further highlighted that the CDC's response came only after a direct intervention by Representative Costa. Facing this condemnation, Cohen continued to defend the CDC's investigation and repeated her assertion that there were no select agents at the biolab. How could she possibly know that? After Cohen, and so select agents are, so I should explain this. There are pathogens, viruses, bacteria that labs can do experiments on without having to go through the select agent program. The select agent program is monitored by the federal government, and what that does is you put a request in, say you want to work with tuberculosis or you want to work with malaria, you're trying to develop a vaccine or a treatment or whatever. There are certain categories of pathogens that need level 3 and 4 labs, because if they got out, it would be a nightmare. And you have to get those agents in order to be able to do that experiment. They have to know stuff about your lab, know that you're following safety protocols, know that the lab is appropriate for that sort of work. And they did not do this, yet they had agents there that would fall under the select agent thing. And this person just keeps saying over and over again, there were no select agents at the biolab, even though they were labeled as such, and not select agents, but as pathogens that would be considered select agents. So after Cohen reiterated the agency could not find anything they suspected was Ebola, would not, Dunn accused the CDC of blowing off the well-founded concerns of Reedley authorities. Dunn, a former surgeon and medical doctor with the U.S. Army, concluded his remarks by saying, "In my professional career in biological warfare, I have never seen anything like this. The worst concern I have is that this biolab may not be the only one. Cohen became the CDC's director on July 10, 2023, months after CDC officials conducted their investigation in Reedley. Given that Cohen responded in similar fashion to multiple lines of questioning from different members of Congress on the matter, it's not clear whether she was fully familiar with what transpired at Reedley. And what's interesting about this is typical. What they do is they get somebody new, they send that person to answer all the questions, and then that person is like, I wasn't with the agency at the time. I'm not aware. I'd have to look into that, and it goes nowhere. And that's Congress's fault as well. Rochelle Walensky was in charge when all this is going on. So what you need to do is you need to haul Rochelle Walensky's butt in and make her answer some questions, because she would have been over the CDC at the time. And she needs to be held accountable for more than just that. While Cohen appeared confident in the prudence of her agency's apparently lax attitude to the Reedley lab that deeply worried local and state officials, one of her predecessors took a decidedly different view on the dangers of biolabs that conduct controversial experiments with deadly viruses. Virologist Robert Redfield, CDC director from 2018 to 2021, has said that experiments that engineer and mutate viruses to make them more virulent have no place in the scientific community. During his March 2023 testimony before the House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic, Redfield said that he is unaware of any time in history when such experiments have ever resulted in the discovery of a life-saving vaccine treatment. We can say the same for COVID. He added that, on the contrary, such experiments probably caused the greatest pandemic our world has seen, a reference to COVID-19. If a former CDC director believes that even regulated and sanctioned experiments of the kind that occurred at Reedley should be uniformly stopped, it's surprising that current CDC Director Cohen seems to care so little about the presence of an illegal lab illicitly engaged in such experiments without any oversight, let alone basic standards of safety and hygiene. And I'm not going to read the rest of this, but what's really interesting about this lab is so problematic. The person who was doing this investigation just walked right in. You've got agents labeled Ebola, coronavirus, all these sorts of things that would cause problems, and she just walked right in. She walked right in and could walk right over and look at those samples that should be in a biolab level 3 or 4. And nobody's worried about this. If you live in Reedley, California, don't breathe deep or drink the water, man. That's insane. That is a huge failure of our government. And what should even be more concerning to you is what I told you before, that there are biolabs in every state in this country, and our government keeps focusing us on the ones in China, Ukraine, other places. Actually, they're trying to distract you from those as well. Thank you, Summer. So I'm worried about it. We've got 2 labs in Lexington. They're BSL-3. I think one of them's a 4. And those are through the college for the most part. But those are the registered labs. How many unregistered labs do we have? The other thing a lot of people don't realize is that these labs in universities or affiliated with universities or even the military rent out lab space. And they don't necessarily oversee what's being done in that lab space. So say I was trying to cook up the heebie-jeebie virus and, for lack of a better word, the heebie-jeebie virus, and I needed to rent some lab space, I can slap together some pretty rudimentary paperwork and get in there and tell them I'm just, working on this new heebie-jeebie virus, but I'm in there really working on Ebola that I got from a Chinese friend or, from any number of other illegal routes, and they would have no idea what was going on in there. So just something for you to think about. More things to make you not sleep at night. My apologies. You got to laugh or you'd cry. Now we're going to talk about measles, because measles, we're having a measles run here, and I don't want everybody to be freaked out by measles. That's husband. Hold on here. Husband? Hi, baby. Hey. Your supper's on the counter.
Why, thank you.
You just need to heat it up, and your milk's in the fridge.
Hey,
what?
I just learned a new word.
Tell me. Heebie-jeebie?
Nope.
No?
Dang it. A brand new word, like in the last 3 minutes.
What was it?
Ava.
Ava?
Ava. You know, if you see it in print, it has to be a word.
So, how use it in a sentence?
Don't be just part of a fleet. OFA.
They made it as one word?
And one word.
They probably just forgot the space.
No. I'm telling you, on the back of a semi, it was printed on a big banner trying to get people to join their OFA.
I was behind a semi yesterday going to the VA to go to an appointment with my dad, and it said in big bold black letters, every damn day.
Oh, gee. That's all it said?
That's all it said. Every damn day. I couldn't get up to see what the side said. I wanted to know the rest of the story. Like what? Every damn day. Every damn day you have to drive this truck, or every damn day you have an accident. Every damn day you run over a puppy. What? I don't know.
That's crazy.
Now I'm left to guess what this guy does every damn day.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. I know you all want to know.
Yeah. I still like the sign in Berea. No unauthorized vehicles.
They put a little like soccer park in for the kids in Berea, Kentucky, and Don's used to be a sign guy, and so on the trail, or on this paved path, it says no unauthorized vehicles. OTHERIZED.
Otherized.
Unauthorized. So you better keep your unauthorized vehicles where they're supposed to be, because Don's coming after you if you don't. He's had enough.
I'm the sign police.
He's the sign police.
I started taking pictures and collecting those.
Why have you not sent these to me?
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to do that. OFA.
Every damn day.
Every damn day.
That's right. Surprising remedies for measles might have saved lives. So there's currently a measles outbreak going on, and there's different reasons for that. There are people here from other countries who aren't properly inoculated. But there are people here from this country who aren't properly inoculated. There are people here who have read the safety concerns about vaccines, and so they're withholding them from their kids till they get a little older. They're withholding them from them altogether, or sometimes they are spacing them out. And so they'll get one vaccine, and instead of getting 5 other shots that day, they'll say, we'll come back in a month or 2 for the next ones. So for varying reasons, sometimes kids are sick and can't get their shots. People have religious objections, so there's always going to be some disease just for that reason. What I think a lot of people don't realize when they search measles, so I had measles as a child, I had chickenpox, I had rubella, I did not have mumps, I had something else. What are the other childhood diseases? Measles, chickenpox, rubella. I can't remember, but anyway, we had at least those. Probably hand, foot, and mouth. Everybody's pretty much had that one by the time they're grown. And we did just fine. And we got chickenpox or measles right after we got chickenpox. And we did just fine. So when you look up the stats on measles and the amount of deaths and hospitalizations, what I want you to keep in mind is they make that sound like, or when people read that, they think that that's what happens here in this country. Generally, the only time that children are hospitalized with measles is they've got some other condition, cancer, something like that, that's so impacted their immune system that they cannot fight the disease properly. The other issue is that a lot of the kids that were hospitalized, died, had neurological effects, deafness, things like that from measles were from underdeveloped countries. And they were malnourished, and they were very low in vitamin A. And we now know that if you give 2 doses, a dose for 2 days of vitamin A when a child gets measles, they do very well. So knowing that the measles vaccine increases the risk of autism for Black boys, I can see where Black parents might be, resistant to giving that. We know that if we wait until those boys are 2 to give the first MMR, that they have a lower rate of autism. So that's also something to think about. But if you are, you're nervous about giving vaccines, you're waiting, you're going to withhold altogether, those are your choices as a parent, and you have the right to those choices. If you have kids that are vaccinated and you're freaking out about that, I don't know why. Your kids are vaccinated. You don't need to worry about your kids, right? If your belief is that the vaccine prevents measles. So my thought is that, let's make sure that children are healthy. Let's make sure they're not eating garbage food. Let's make sure that they're not spending all their time in front of screens. And if they get something like measles, and even kids who've had the measles vaccine can get measles, it's not 100% effective. Let's give them a dose of vitamin A day 1, dose of vitamin A day 2, then they'll have a permanent immunity to measles, problem solved. And we can make everybody happy, right? We can take care of the kids who do get it because their parents are nervous about the vaccine or withholding or whatever. The kids that have the shot, their parents will be happy because they've got the shot and they don't need to worry. The kids who get sick despite the shot will have treatment, won't end up in the hospital, problem solved. This was very much my approach with COVID. I knew that the shots were not going to prevent the infection. And I kept saying, what then? So if the immunization is your only answer, what then is your plan when those people who are vaccinated get COVID? You still have to have treatment. You have to have a multi-pronged approach to viral illness, to most any illness, really. And you're fine. I was hassling you. He's trying to get the foil off his plate. Oh, that's funny. Okay. So recent measles outbreaks have reignited discussions about the vaccine. But does a vaccine resolve the problem, or are there more effective ways to prepare? As newly emerging cases of measles have been reported in the US and Europe is also facing an outbreak, health authorities worldwide are calling for vaccination, drawing attention to this old but still unresolved contagious disease. However, when measles swept the world in the last century, it was not a vaccine that saved millions of lives. Almost all children contracted measles in the first half of the 20th century. Prior to the 1960s, an estimated 30 million cases and 2.6 million deaths due to measles occurred annually worldwide. Keep worldwide in mind, because in children who were properly nourished, we didn't see that. It's kind of like in kids who have properly functioning immune systems, who don't have cancer or something else, we don't see deaths from COVID. It really depends on the population. Young children have been most affected, as seen in 1906, when 85% of reported deaths were children under age 5, and most of them were starving. From 1912 to 1922, an average of 6,000 measles-related deaths in the United States were reported each year. I want you to think about the time frame from 1912 to 1922. What was sanitation like? People were in cramped housing. There were all kinds of other issues. Although measles was declared eradicated in the United States in 2000, new cases have emerged during the past decades. The U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention documented 1,274 cases in 31 states in 2019. What would have been really nice to know right there was, what was the mortality rate? But they conveniently leave that. I mean, if you're a journalist, that's an important part of the story. What was the mortality in these kids? And we don't know. They say that the World Health Organization says around 134,200 deaths are attributed to measles, and they are generally in underdeveloped countries. Dating back to the 19th century, I can't read that name, documented measles. In 1757, Scottish doctor Francis Home determined that measles was caused by a virus, basically. And you can see that rash there on the right. It's a very specific rash that you see with measles. Features a distinctive rash that typically begins on the face, extends downward, covers the neck, the trunk, the arms, legs, and feet. As the rash progresses, flat red spots may merge, and individuals often simultaneously experience a high fever. I remember us having fevers with it. It can cause serious complications, including infections in the lungs and nervous system, resulting in the hospitalization of 1 in 5 patients. Based on the old data, not today. I hate that. Yes, 1 in 5 patients were hospitalized back in the day when kids were not properly nourished, and countries where kids were starving to death. 1 in 5 was, this is not the current data. but they put it in there as though it is. It's so frustrating to me because I just feel like people are entitled to accurate information. They're entitled to make their own decisions, even if they're wrong. And this is why you need a multi-pronged approach. Because, nobody should suffer physically for being wrong if we can think of ways to avoid that. In 1967, global vaccination campaign was supposed to eradicate measles, but it did not happen. In 1978, the United States set a goal to eliminate measles by 1982, but it also did not occur. Health authorities often claim measles vaccine effectiveness to be close to 100%. This is how they measure it, by the seroconversion rate that is based on the development of vaccine antibodies regardless of age. That's the same thing they did with COVID. They gave kids the shot, and then they tested what their rate, how high their antibodies were after. The problem with that is we found that the amount of their antibodies did not correlate to them not getting infected. There's way more that goes into getting infected than just your antibodies. However, skepticism exists about the vaccine's role in eradicating the disease. First, the claim of nearly 100% efficacy relies solely on the antibodies induced by the vaccine and may not accurately reflect the clinical protection rate, so how many kids actually get sick. An accurate calculation of an absolute infection rate requires a randomized placebo-controlled study, which has never been done for the measles vaccine. I know that's going to shock a lot of people. Furthermore, historical records indicate that measles incidence and mortality rates were already declining before the widespread use of a vaccine. The following chart shows the death rate for measles in the U.S. from 1900 to 1987. Before the introduction of the measles vaccine in 1963, the death rate had declined from its peak by a massive 98.7%. So here's 1924 right here. We don't have the measles vaccine till down here, but look how these cases are coming down. Part of that's immunity because kids had it and spread it around. Part of that is just better living situations, better standard of living, better nutrition, right? Better maternal nutrition, that sort of thing. The following chart shows the death rate for measles in England. The English started recording mortality statistics in 1838, much earlier than the United States. Measles deaths plummeted in the late 1800s, nearly reaching zero by the 1950s. In 1968, England began vaccinating. So, measles deaths plummeted in the late 1800s, nearly reaching zero by the 1950s. In 1968, 18 years later, they began vaccinating. By that point, the death rate had declined from its peak by 99.8%. And I'm sure this was just through hygiene and good nutrition. Even without a vaccine, by 1960, the reported cases of childhood measles in England and Wales were only 2.4%, and the mortality rate was, 1 in 5 before? Dropped to 0.03%. That's what good nutrition and sanitation have done for this country and others. Despite measles vaccine coverage as high as 88% in Zimbabwe, measles outbreaks remained consistent. During the outbreaks from 1967 to 89, increased measles vaccine coverage not only failed to decrease the case fatality rate, but appeared to be linked to a higher incidence of measles, which is what we're seeing with the COVID-19 jabs. The more vaccinated people are, the more frequently they're infected with COVID. Is it true for everybody? No, but overall it's true. Nutrition matters. Between 1867 and 1872 in the Paris orphanage, almost half of the children with measles died. That's where those 1 in 5 numbers are coming from, guys. However, the death rate of measles in England and Wales in 1960 had declined to around 0.1% in children. Globally, children's nutrition and hygiene significantly improved in the 20th century, along with greater access to healthcare and drugs, resulting in 90% decrease in infant mortality since 1900. The other problem that we had here in the States was child labor. Very young children were working very dangerous jobs, which kept them out of sunlight, out of just all of the things that make children healthy. So when they got measles, they died from it. The significant role of nutritional factors in measles infections and deaths has been described in many scientific studies. Researchers found in Zimbabwe that declining measles case fatality rates were associated with declining malnutrition among children under age 5. In other words, malnutrition was a strong and independent predictor of measles case fatality rates. We're going to read this little bit about vitamin A. Vitamin A is essential and plays a vital role in preventing measles infection and reducing mortality. A 2011 systematic review and meta-analysis based on 43 randomized controlled trials, including 215,633 children, conducted between 1976 and 2010, found that a vitamin A supplementation was associated with a 50% reduction in measles. A 2021 Indian study reported that during a 2018 outbreak, children who were unvaccinated but received preventative vitamin A supplementation had a 77% reduced risk of contracting measles. As early as 1932, a London study of 600 hospitalized kids under 5 with measles were equally assigned to receive either routine measles therapy, which is just supportive therapy, fluids, fever meds, or routine therapy plus 1 ounce of cod liver oil rich in vitamins A and D. Those with nutritional supplement therapy experienced a significant reduction in mortality from 8.7% to 3.7%. If you'd treated them with cod liver oil daily before they went into the hospital, I doubt they'd have ended up there in the first place. This effect was particularly pronounced in those under 2 years of age. A 1987 Tanzanian study recruited 180 kids with measles, 90% of whom were deficient in vitamin A. The relative risk of mortality was significantly reduced among those given vitamin A versus those given only routine treatment, 7% versus 13%. Again, had they not been low in vitamin A to begin with, I suspect they could have avoided hospitalization. The difference was more pronounced in children under age 2 and in cases with croup or laryngotracheal bronchitis. Similarly, a 2005 Cochrane review, if you've watched the show any length of time, Cochrane review is some of the best science we have, revealed that vitamin A reduced mortality by 79% in children under 2 years of age. The review also found a decrease in croup incidence with 2 doses. No adverse effects were reported. I'm really curious why we don't give 2 doses of vitamin A for croup. Furthermore, a more robust reduction of death in those with complicated measles was reported. In a randomized placebo-controlled double-blind study, best kind, vitamin A given to 60 hospitalized young African children with complicated measles resulted in a reduction of deaths at day 8, at 6 weeks, at 6 months by 82%, 61%, and 85% respectively. The significant decline in the common complications as evaluated by the morbidity score after vitamin A treatment contributed to the substantially reduced mortality. So they talk about how it reduces the severity of measles. It's now officially recognized in multiple studies that vitamin A is the treatment for measles. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of that if you've got littles or grandkids, because, I don't want your littles or grandkids sick. Hey, Utterly Free, welcome. All right. Let me close out that measles one. Okay, next we have, this is the study I've been waiting to come out. Got a lot of medical news tonight. Let me share this one. Make sure you guys can see it. There we go. All right. mRNA COVID-19 vaccines killed more people than they saved. So a lot of people who are pro-COVID-19 vaccine, I'm not judging, a lot of the people who are pro-COVID-19 vaccine have this false assumption that correlation equals causation. They assume that because they had a COVID-19 vaccine, they were saved from death from COVID-19 when they got it. And that's just absolutely not the case. And we know that because we can look at people who've never been vaccinated and look at their mortality rate. If the vaccine were the thing that was preventing deaths and hospitalizations, then what you would see would be in unvaccinated populations, super high death rate in hospitalization rate, and we just don't see that. At first there was a lot of attention given to that, but most of the people who were getting really sick were in poor health to begin with, especially with obesity. Obesity just increases overall inflammation in the body so much that it puts you at high risk for any viral infection becoming very serious. I would much rather see you lose weight than get vaccines that we don't have long-term safety data on. And I'm sure I'll get in trouble for saying that with YouTube's. With considerably lower efficacy rates, mRNA COVID-19 vaccines caused more deaths than the number of lives they saved, according to a new study whose researcher called for a global moratorium on the shots and their immediate removal from the childhood immunization schedule. The peer-reviewed study, published in the journal Curious on January 24, analyzed reports from the initial phase 3 trials of Pfizer and Moderna COVID-19 vaccines. These trials led to the shots being approved under EUA in the United States. The study also looked into several other research and reviews of the trials. It found that the vaccines had dramatically lower efficacy rates than the vaccine companies claimed, which we knew. Moreover, based on conservative assumptions, the estimated harms of the vaccine grossly outweigh the rewards. For every life saved, there were nearly 14 times more deaths caused by the modified mRNA injections. And I have people say to me all the time, well, I've had 2 shots or 4 shots or 10 shots, and I'm fine. As though that's a scientific study. A lot of people are fine, but a lot of people aren't. And just because some people are fine doesn't mean that we should ignore and not study the people who aren't. We need to know more about the people who aren't, if not to stop the vaccine altogether. At least it would show us, hey, maybe there is a profile of people who do not do well with this vaccine, who suffer serious adverse event or death. And if we could figure out who those people are by actually acknowledging and studying them, then we could avoid vaccinating those people and offer other treatments for COVID-19. Or, I don't know, here's a brilliant idea. We could just offer treatments that work and that are safe for COVID-19. Instead of giving things like Paxlovid, we could give ivermectin, has a much better safety profile. Doxycycline, much better safety profile than Paxlovid, and neither of those drugs result in relapse. Given the well-documented serious adverse events and unacceptable harm to reward ratio, we urge governments to endorse and enforce a global moratorium on these vaccines. The author also recommended immediate removal from the kids' schedule. So following the trial, it was claimed that COVID vaccines were 95% efficacious in the reduction of symptomatic COVID-19. The study pointed out that this efficacy assumption was false. Pfizer's claim was based on the fact that only 8 out of 22,000 vaccine recipients contracted COVID-19 during the trial, compared to 162 out of 22,000 people in the placebo group. In total, 170 confirmed COVID-19 cases were reported in both groups. However, the research pointed out that a large number of infections fell under the suspected COVID-19 category and were ignored, so they didn't confirm those cases. So there's no evidence that, because we didn't study it again. A total of 3,410 such suspected cases were identified in the trial, which is 20 times the 170 confirmed cases. There were 1,594 such cases in the vaccinated group and 1,816 in the placebo group. When factoring in both confirmed and suspected cases, vaccine efficacy against developing symptoms drops to only 19%. For me, a 19% efficacy rate doesn't balance out with no long-term data. I'm just not willing to take that kind of a chance. Far below the 50% relative risk reduction threshold required for regulatory authorization. Normally, for a vaccine, you have to be able to show a relative risk reduction of 50%, but instead they used absolute risk reduction, which is a horrible, it wasn't even legal before now to use that. Thus, when considering, or maybe it's the other way around, when considering both confirmed and suspected cases, vaccine efficacy appears to have been dramatically lower than the official 95% claim. The study authors declared no financial support. Researchers criticized the Pfizer and Moderna trial reports for exclusive focus on relative risk, or RR measures, while omitting absolute risk reduction. So that's the problem. So relative risk reduction. So say you got 10 people in a trial and you give 5 the shot and you don't give 5 the shot, and 2 people in the non-shot group get sick and only 1 person in the shot group gets sick. Then they'll give you this huge efficacy. Well, that's problematic because you have to then look at, when you get to big numbers, you then have to look at the serious adverse events. And they're not doing that. So absolute risk reduction would be we gave the vaccine and people lived longer overall. People had less hospitalizations overall. And the reason that we look at that is because you have to consider the adverse events of the vaccine, right? So if you prevent 5 COVID deaths, but 10 people have heart attacks, the absolute risk reduction is not there, right? If it causes something worse, well, yeah, you didn't get it's like the trial that my dad was in for Ozempic, right? Dad's taking Ozempic and in a clinical trial to show that it will reduce weight in diabetics and reduce hemoglobin A1C, which is your overall 3-month blood sugar. So he keeps losing weight, losing muscle mass, having falls. He's 5'10" and he weighs 135 pounds. He weighed 170 something when he started this study. So their relative risk, their numbers saying, yes, look, here he's a success story. His A1C came down, his weight came down. They don't tell you that his weight came down because he lost muscle mass, that he's had several dozen falls since being on it, one that resulted in a broken femur. They don't tell that whole story. They're like, oh, that's unrelated. It's not unrelated. We know these semaglutide drugs reduce muscle mass, and in the elderly, that increases the risk for falls. Okay. He's also having frequent UTIs, which is not common in men. Well, when you're affecting muscle control, what can happen is you can get pelvic floor weakness, and then the person is unable to empty their bladder fully, and then bacteria just sits in there. But that won't go into the trial either because they're not tracking that stuff. It's really, really frustrating. And it goes along with the story that I told you guys. If I take 10 COVID patients and I put them all out here in the yard and I shoot them in the head, if I take 10 healthy people, put them in the front yard and shoot them in the head, I could then write a clinical trial that says high-speed projectile delivered to the head was 100% effective in preventing COVID-19 infection. I would have a relative risk reduction that was outstanding. But everyone would be dead. And this is how clinical trials are being done. So I just want you guys to be aware of that, especially as you're going forward and you're sharing information with family and friends. And I know how frustrating that can be because people are so dug in on their standing, on their position on COVID vaccines. Okay, so I think that's the end of our health-related stuff. Oh, utterly, I forgot to take that down. All right, now we have cell phone data on Fanny. Uh-oh. Oh, come on. This crazy thing. I don't want to turn off an ad blocker. I don't want to subscribe. Oh, this is frustrating. Hold on. See if I can get this to load. Here we go. It might block it again. We'll see. That's one of the biggest issues, the manipulation of the data or its interpretation to what is more convenient to them. Well, what is more profitable generally. I always have a problem in trusting them. That's wise. I would advise that for all things involving government. Oh, that's so frustrating. Hold on a second. Let me see. I might have this on Pundit. I'll just tell you about it. So when Fannie got up on the stand, so Fannie Willis, that's the case where that's the RICO case that they're going after Trump on. And one of the people that is a co-defendant in that trial came out and said that Fannie Willis and Nathan Wade, who's the special counsel that she appointed, were having an affair, and that's why she hired him for this, that he's not qualified. Boy, my face is red today. And that this just was improper. There's issues with how the money, all kinds of stuff. And this ended up getting a hearing. And with this hearing, Nathan Wade, who's the guy that Fani Willis is dating, Fani Willis is the Fulton County DA, he said that they did not start dating until 2022, 2023, something like that. Fani said the same thing. They said they never stayed overnight together. All kinds of stuff. They got on the stand. They signed interrogatory. So interrogatory is like a questionnaire that you fill out before you go to a hearing, and it's a sworn statement, so you can't lie on it. So on multiple occasions, they have lied about their relationship, about when it started, about them going on trips together, about this exchange of cash, about going to Washington, D.C. and meeting with Jack Smith, which should have no bearing on this case because it's prejudicial. A case has to stand on its own merit. And so, they denied going to Washington. There's all kinds of billing issues. And so they got up on the stand, and Nathan Wade and Fani Willis both said that they had not started seeing each other until whenever it was, 2022 or 2023. I can't remember. But one of the people that was one of her good friends, who she took over the lease on a condo from and had been her friend for over 10 years, got up and said, no, the relationship started in 2019. And they denied this. And they accused the attorney who brought the testimony out of lying and asked that she be censured for it, which really torqued her off because she wasn't lying. And she had testimony from more than one witness that, yes, these two were dating, and it was before the date that they said, which is improper. And so they got up on the stand, and I don't know what they were thinking, but Trump's lawyer said, so if we told you we had phone data that shows that you were in the area at the condo in the town where Fani was staying, and if we said that we had text messages and emails and calls going back and forth between the two of you, that would be false, and you're given sworn testimony, and these are both lawyers, so they both know better. One is a district attorney. Okay, I mean that is the legal arm of the state, and they were like, yes, that would definitely be wrong. That would be incorrect. Well, they did geofencing. And they got a subpoena, and they got the phone records, and there were thousands. I'm not exaggerating. I was surprised. It was like over 2 years, thousands of texts and calls back. I think it was 10,000 texts, 2,000 calls, for these two people who weren't seeing each other. They have geofencing data of him leaving his place, going to her place, staying till 4:00 in the morning. And I'm guessing this is how she got around with semantics and was like, no, he never stayed the night. Well, I'm guessing she's like, well, he didn't stay 8 hours. He didn't stay from midnight to 8 a.m. or whatever. He left in the middle of the night, so he didn't stay the night. It's exactly what they were doing. And you can go back and watch the testimony. I may just skip some of this and let you listen to her testimony. If you didn't see it, it's just, she is the most arrogant, narcissistic person you've ever seen. There's no humility in her at all. And it was just crazy to watch. I just was like, she didn't even get called to the stand. She was upstairs and she heard that Nathan Wade was done testifying, and she stormed into the court and took the stand without even being called to the stand. That's how arrogant she is. So we may watch some of that. But anyway, that's what's going on there. And actually, I may go ahead and pull that up since we're on the topic and not wait till later. Let me search here. I think that's on Robert's page. If you guys do not follow Robert Goivea, I'm going to show you his page. And he really is so good at going through the documents and explaining them and teaching what's going on with them. And he's funny. I think you'll really like him. Okay, here's his page. Let me share this. Let me get this link up first. Well, no, I'm going to show you the page first. I'll decide what I'm doing here in a little minute. Okay, this is what his page looks like. It's called Watching the Watchers. You can also just search Robert Goivea, Gouvea. Again, it's Gouvea, Robert Goivea. And then let me pull up the testimony. It's just so entertaining to watch. Where is it? That's Ingron. That's Barnes. Hold on, it looks different than it does on my TV. There's her dad. There's Wade. Okay, Wade and Fanny's daddy. Roy Barnes. Where is... Here it is. Okay, let me pause it. Oh, it's paused. Okay. And let me make sure we're sharing the sound here. That is one of the biggest issues, the manipulation. Oh, yeah, I saw that one. And I agree. Okay, so let me see if I can make this a little bigger, or actually crop it, make it bigger. Get it down to the screen here. Hope you guys had a really good week. And I hope you're going to just enjoy some downtime this weekend or family time. Seems like that's lacking. Like we all need more of that. Okay. Hopefully that'll share the sound. Okay, I got no sound.
Name, then she should have the opportunity to clear her name. And let's see if she does that. There's Fanny on the bench. What are we going to hear? No bias, no influence. It was a loving relationship.
We're back on the record. Deputy Scott, if you could swear in our next witness.
I would, and I do apologize. Anna, do me a favor. Hold on, my niece some reading glasses.
Reading glasses.
Anna, do me a favor. Go get my reading glasses.
You didn't even.
Who does she think she is?
So I don't hold up the court.
Oh my gosh.
If you swear on fire to the testimony, you should get a code. Help you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, spell your first name.
District.
Last name for the court.
District Attorney Fani, Fani. Last name is Willis.
Yes, Fanny Willis.
Miss Willis, how did you know to come into the courtroom right then?
There were people, I was pacing in my office.
Okay.
And I heard someone yell, his testimony is done. It only made sense to me that I would be your next witness. And I've
Wow.
been very anxious to have this conversation with you today. So I ran to the courtroom.
So as soon as you heard that Mr. Wade was done testifying, that's when you just assumed you would be the next witness?
It only makes sense.
Did you listen to any of the testimony?
I've been in my office pacing, ma'am.
Did you listen to any of the arguments?
I did hear the arguments this morning. It's ridiculous to me that you lied on Monday and
Whoa.
yet here we still are. And I did listen to that argument.
This is bad.
All right. So that was it. Just the argument, no testimony.
Right. I listened to the argument this morning where Adam Abadi, I thought, did an excellent job pointing out how dishonest you were with the court on Monday.
This judge.
And I'm actually surprised that the hearing continued. But since it did, here I am.
Great.
She's furious.
So let's talk about what you did in preparation for today. Did you meet with Mr. Wade at all? Once the motion was filed, did you meet with Mr. Wade and talk to him about the motion that I filed to disqualify you?
On this first January motion?
Yes.
I don't know if you could say talked about. I probably had some choice words about some of the things that you said that were dishonest within this motion. So I don't know that it was a conversation. As you know, Mr. Wade is a Southern gentleman, me not so much.
So you screamed at
Okay.
him?
But my question was, did you have a conversation with
I didn't
him?
have a substantive conversation.
You did not.
I read this motion, skimmed it more so.
This is bad.
And I've probably said some choice things to him about some of the lies that were told.
So she did talk
And
to
Way
been
too
him.
printed in the
emotional.
media because, we used to be in a day in time where you had 60 Minutes and people did stories and they verified information and you had this great reporting. But it
You're gonna
seems
be able to
today
explain
that
that
a
today.
lawyer writes a lie and then it's printed for all of the world to see.
You're in court.
Well, I just want to make sure that you answer the question I asked, though.
Okay, so just so you're clear, when the other side is questioning you, so when Trump's lawyers are questioning her, she should just answer the questions directly. This is standard. She should just, yes, no, just answer the question that's asked. She has an opportunity to elaborate when the lawyers representing her get up. Then they'll flesh out more details about that. And she knows this because she's a DA, yet she's choosing to grandstand. So just so you're aware of what she's doing here.
So my question was,
Overruled, Mr. Abadi.
Yeah. She's being, yeah. Pipe down,
I
buddy.
told you what happened. I read the motion. I am sure I've told him what my opinion of it is.
Okay.
And past that, we had no substantive conversation.
you did not.
Is
He
there
said you
something you
did.
didn't understand?
He
No, I
said-
just wanted to make sure that
Okay.
He
you
said
did not
you did.
have
Nathan said
a
you
meeting
did.
with him in the conference room to discuss the
All
motion.
right, next question,
No.
Ms. Mersham.
So in the conference room of my office within this week,
Okay, so she just says she did not have a substantive conversation with him. Now she's going to tell you that in the conference room, she did discuss his testimony. She she basically went in there and set herself on fire. It was just, I'm like, how have you risen this high in your profession? I can't get my brain around it.
Produced some financial document was given to me, something, and I'm not even sure if it was given it to him by me or Mr. Abadi gave it to me. And I think he showed me a document in our conference room. But as far as a substantive conversation, I don't believe I've had any conversation with him that is substantive related to this.
Okay.
I have had conversations with him since you filed the motion, but they wouldn't be substantive to this. He's sent me very nice sermons that have been done. And so we've had conversations about, did you listen to that sermon?
Is that why you talked to
You know,
church?
things of that nature. And I would say they were in relationship to this because I think he did it to be kind.
Let's start back in 2019.
Yep.
So you and Mr. Wade met in October 2019 at a conference?
That is correct. And I think in one of your motions, you tried to implicate I slept with him at that conference, which I find to be extremely offensive. I stayed at that conference. Mr. Wade was my teacher. I did not meet him when he taught the class. I was standing outside talking to Lisa Reeves, who is a judge. Me and her were just having a conversation. Mr. Wade walks up. I think they hug each other, introduces us.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. We kind of thought that when you asked a question, you can answer the question, not a speech. So I object to the speech making.
I
I
agree.
believe I'm able to explain my answers.
I believe she's able to explain her answers.
And
That's Ms. Merchant. That's okay. I can handle it. Ms. Willis, I'll ask you just listen to the answer, or excuse me, the question, and keep the answers confined to the question as best you can. I think you'll have more than enough ample opportunity on when the state is
Well,
able
it's
to ask
highly offensive when
follow-ups.
someone lies on you, and it's highly offensive when they try
Judge.
to implicate that you slept with somebody the first day you met with them, and I take exception to it.
All right. Well, Ms. Willis, you'll have the opportunity to explain all of that
You
when
will.
it's the state's turn to ask more open-ended questions.
I'm kind of
Yeah.
open
Ms. Merchant.
to her.
What the attorney actually said was that they began a relationship in 2019. She didn't say that she slept with her on the first day that she met her. This is Fanny bloviating. She's just counting on that you're not going to go back and watch the previous testimony and see what was actually said.
Talking.
Thank you, Judge.
I kind of okay. With
So again,
that.
my
Just let her
question
go.
was, you all met at that conference though, right?
We did. The
Okay.
meeting, as I stated, he taught the class. I did not actually meet him when he taught the class. I walked out of the class, and I'm not sure if it was that exact class or we had went to lunch, but we were standing in the vestibule, like outside of the class.
Isn't it true that you met Mr. Wade October 2019
I'm
at
gonna
a judge's
We
conference?
haven't gotten to the point where Ms. Willis should be treated possibly under 611.
I think we
And
have.
I'm very
Mr.
much
Abadi.
want to be here, so I'm not a hostile witness. I
Yes, you
very
are.
much want to be
Not so
here.
much that you're hostile, Ms. Willis. It'd be an adverse witness. Your interests are opposed to Ms. Merchant's.
Yep. And we can
These
see it.
merchants' interests are contrary to democracy, Your Honor.
Oh, oh gosh.
All
Oh
right,
yeah.
let's
Judge,
proceed.
just ask that
We
we-
can keep things moving. Ms. Merchant,
Thank you,
next
Lord.
question, please.
Okay,
that on your
so
bingo
we've confirmed
card?
when you met. After that, isn't it true?
No, I need to explain this, and I think I get to explain my answers. When I met him, Judge Reeves introduced us. He handed me his business card. I'm unsure if I handed him my business card, but we exchanged information. He said, if you ever need any help, give me a call. And he walked to the parking lot.
You started dating shortly thereafter, correct?
It's a lie. That's one of your lies.
Okay. Do you know Robin Yurdy?
I know her as Robin Bryant.
You have been friends with Robin for 30-something years.
I've known her for 30-something years.
So I'm not going to show you Robin's testimony, but Robin is the one who gave testimony that she worked in the office with both of them. She saw them together. Fanny confided in her about them having a relationship in 2019. And so did one of, who was the other fella? Terrence something. Terrence debunked. I think they didn't hear each other's or weren't allowed to hear each other's testimony. I don't know how closely that's kept or not. But we have, before she comes on to testify, we have Nathan Wade testifying and we have Terrence testifying. And I think her friend as well testified before. And everybody, Terrence and the friend are telling the same story. And then Nathan backs up some of they can't get their lies straight is basically what I'm telling you.
So
But we didn't talk throughout that time period. I didn't see her. I didn't even know where she was. When I ran into her, I was surprised she was in Atlanta. And so, yes, I have known her probably since 1990, 1991, but we have not maintained a consistent relationship that whole time.
for the last 10 years or 5, whatever you'd like to classify it as, have you been friends with her?
I have not spoken to Robin in over a year. I certainly do not consider her a friend now. I think that
A lot of drama
You
in that
know,
office.
there's a saying, no good deed goes unpunished. And I think that she betrayed our friendship
Wow.
So let's
Wait, I
narrow it
never
down, the
read.
timeline though. So my questions are going to be from the time period of 2019 until she no longer was employed for you, the last time you all talked. So all of my next questions are just focused on that time frame, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
During 2021, you all were friends, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And such good friends that when you needed a place to stay, you asked her if you could take over her lease.
That's a lie.
You did
That's
not
not
move
the-
into her apartment?
I
or her
did, but
condo?
that's not the way you characterize it is wrong.
I asked if you could take over her lease.
I
you
did not
take-
ask if I could take over her lease.
Okay. What'd you do?
Did you move into her apartment?
I moved into her condo in April of 21, but the circumstances around that were that Robin met her husband. They wanted to move into another space. She wanted to get rid of her condo. My father was living with me at the house.
And you
Because
need-
of this case and because of my stance on gangs, my life was being threatened regularly.
Yes, because
My
of the
father
Trump case.
urged me to leave our home. At the same time, as luck would have it, Robin wanted to give up her lease because she wanted to move in with this new man she
No.
met, who eventually became her husband.
And you moved in with a new man,
as
too,
life
Nathan.
circumstances worked, my dad was begging me to leave the house. He was afraid for me, afraid for his grandchildren. She wanted someone to take over her lease so that she didn't, have to pay a fee or get abandoned. And so I don't remember when, but probably March or April of 21, I move in and take over her lease.
When did you
Whatever
move
she
out?
said it was, that's what I paid.
When did
Okay, so supposedly she's not seeing Nathan Wade, but we now have geofencing data and messages back and forth between them that show that they were seeing each other. He was going to the condo. He tried to say that because he had cancer, he was staying in. He wanted to stay in a sterile environment, but he was going to this condo where Fanny was. And I'm like, well, that's not a sterile environment. You're exposed to whatever she's been exposed to. And, they're going out to lunch and dinner at different places, and they've got him geofenced in these locations when he was supposedly, not going over there, not sleeping with anybody because he needed a sterile environment. I don't know what exactly you're doing when you get a phone call from someone at midnight and 35 minutes later you're at their house. You're there till 4:30. I mean, if that's on a booty call, I'm just curious to know what it is.
I abruptly moved out in February, either late January or early February of 22.
Of 22. So you were still friends with Miss Yeardy then. Were you also friends with Mr. Bradley?
I've never been friends with Mr. Bradley.
You've never been friends with Mr. Bradley?
No, I don't consider us to be friends. I don't dislike Mr. Bradley, but
Bradley's like, oh,
I don't consider us to be friends.
what?
Is he someone that you would have in your phone and you would message with?
I might have text messaged him.
Okay. Would you text message him and Mr. Wade on the same conversations?
I don't recall doing that, but if it happened, it wouldn't surprise me.
Okay, so that wouldn't surprise you, the three of you. Okay. How frequently would you think that the three of you would have texted
Not
in a group
very,
chat?
I wouldn't think very often, but you're asking me to recall. I don't even know what time period you're asking me to recall, but I'm not going to speak to that because I just really don't know the answer to that. And so I don't want to speculate as to how often that would happen. But it's not out of my practice to text two people on one text message. So if you told me that happened and showed it to me, although I have no recollection of it.
But there would be some record of it in your phone or the phone records.
So the reason, if you're giving testimony at trial, that you want to keep your answers succinct and, if at all possible, only answer yes, no, is because the more you talk, the more information you let out. And the more information you let out, the more you can be you open a door, and now you can be cross-examined on that. If attorney, so now her attorney will have to come up and try to get her back out of this through redirection. And then because she won't shut up, she'll keep talking and more things will come out. And then the Trump team and the other lawyers, there's like 10 lawyers there for all the different defendants, then they will get up because she kept talking and because her attorney opened the door, they then can prod that next issue. And so that's just my advice. If you ever go to court, yes, sir, no, sir, yes, sir, no, sir, I don't recall. I would have to look. I'm not sure. Yes, sir. When you look at her friend's testimony, that's exactly what it was. She got up there. Yes, no, I don't recall. I'm sorry. I don't understand the question. Yes. And it was quick. It was nothing like this.
Would have some record of those texts.
Perhaps.
And talk about, you said that sometimes you paid Miss Yeardy cash. When you went on vacation with Mr. Wade, let's start with the first one. What's the first time you went on vacation with Mr. Wade?
Hard to remember. They went on a lot of trips.
I think the first time we went on vacation was around April of 22. And a vacation is a stretch, but I'm trying to be comprehensive. I recall April of 22. His birthday is March the 18th. So that would have been his 49th birthday. I took him to like Tennessee for the day. I think we went to a museum. I think we might have stayed the night. I'm not sure.
Oh, Nathan
But-
said no.
I mean, Tennessee's kind of hard to call a vacation, but I just am trying to be inclusive. I know it wasn't more than a day.
So you didn't spend the night?
I think that we did. That's what I'm telling you. I think that there's a possibility that we stayed that night.
Nathan
in
said they did
April
not.
of 22.
Who
Nathan
paid for the hotel?
I think I did. It was his birthday.
And would you have used a credit card?
Probably maybe a debit card.
A debit card?
Hmm.
Do you remember what town you stayed in?
No, I don't remember.
And when did you start dating?
When I started dating Mr. Wade, it was right around then. That
April 2022?
22. Yes, it
2022.
was around then. I don't know, like, it's not like when you're in grade school and you send a little letter and it says, will you be my girlfriend, and you check it. I don't know the day
That's
that
how I
we
do it.
started seeing each other, but it was early
not supposed to do
22
that?
is my recollection.
Okay, early 22. And you all went to Florida on vacation as well?
I don't recall going to Florida on vacation with him.
You never went to Florida with Mr. Wade?
When we went to get on the cruise ship,
You left out
we
of
went to Miami.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the only time that you went to Florida with him?
I think we went to Miami and spent the night. That's my recollection.
Okay.
I think we spent one night. That's my recollection of our
Paid
vacation.
for that hotel.
In Miami? I don't remember that.
And how'd you get to Miami?
We would have flown. And we've done that, so that I'm clear. We've done that twice. I think one time we stayed, and I honestly can't tell you, did we stay when the ship left or did we stay when the ship came back? I also can't tell you. So there's 2 cruises out of Miami. There's one that's in that October time period that was with his mom. And then there was another that was a New Year's Eve trip. I know I paid for the New Year's Eve trip because the tickets were $697 each. And I thought this is ridiculous that the tickets are $700 to go to Miami. But when you travel during New Year's Eve, they get you.
So
What do you
let's
care? It's
just
Fulton
back up
County
and talk
money.
about the first time that you went to Florida with Mr. Wade. That was the time that you said you stayed in Miami at the hotel the first night?
That's the time I told you I am not sure. So I'm not sure of 2 things. So I want to make sure that my testimony is clear. I'm not sure if we stayed in Miami on the October trip. I'm not sure if we stayed in Miami on the December trip. I just can't remember that.
So many trips.
And
It's
I
hard to keep
also don't
track.
remember, so that the record is clear. I don't remember if the necessity was as we got on the ship or we got off the ship. But I do remember there was a night spent in Miami.
I was not asking you which night you stayed in Miami. I'm asking if you took a cruise in October 2022 with Mr. Wade
Yes, and his mom.
and his mother. That's what I was asking.
Yes,
Is that the first time you met his mother?
yes.
It was on that cruise. And that was Royal Caribbean, I believe?
You too. I honestly don't remember what ship. I know we've taken 2 cruises. I don't know what the ships were.
But he paid for the flight and the cruise on Royal Caribbean that time.
So yes, he paid. He is the original one that does it. Mr. Wade is a world traveler. I'm not as versed as him. He's been to 6 of the 7 continents.
Wow.
And so he has both a personal travel agent and he also has a cruise travel agent. I don't know anything about either of those kind of travel agents. So he is the one that would book the travel. We need to be clear when we're talking about just because he booked it doesn't mean, like, I don't consider him having taken me any place. Let me just be honest. The only one that's ever taken somebody someplace is for his 50th birthday. I consider that I took him to Belize and I did 50 big, very big.
50 big.
So
Took him to Belize.
still on that October Royal Caribbean cruise,
Yes.
he paid for the cruise and the flights for that trip.
And I think that when you say things that way, I want this record to be
Initially.
abundantly clear that he calls his travel agent and then he tells me how much it is and I give him the money back. I don't, just like you're asking me about the money with Robin, I don't do my friends like that. So if you tell me it's a G, then you're going to get $1,000. Whatever it is, I didn't ever make him produce receipts to me. Whatever he told me it was, I gave him his money back.
Isn't it true that he paid for the cruise and the flight on his credit card? I'm not asking about reimbursement or after. He used his credit card to buy the cruise and buy the flight, correct?
I have no idea how he paid for it.
Okay.
If it's a credit card, if it's a debit card.
And then after that cruise, you all flew to Aruba and spent a couple days in a hotel there, correct?
Right. And his mother was not happy
He
that we left her
initially
behind.
paid for that. He initially paid for that.
For Aruba. Yes, ma'am.
So let's talk about both of those. I know he initially paid for it. Did you pay him back?
For the cruise and for Aruba. Yeah, I gave him his money before we ever went on that trip.
You gave him cash before you ever went on the trip?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so when you got cash to
Cash.
pay him back on these trips, would you go to the ATM?
No, lady.
No,
You would not
lady.
go to the ATM.
No.
Okay. So Fulton County pays you direct deposit, I assume?
Yes, Fulton County and the state of Georgia both pay me direct deposit.
Okay. So the cash that you would pay him, you wouldn't get it out of the bank.
I have money in my house.
You have money in your house. So it was just money that was there.
When you meet my father, he's going to tell you as a woman, you should always have, which I don't have, so let's don't tell him that. You should have at least 6 months in cash at your house at all time. Now, I don't know why this old black man feels like that.
So my question was, where did that cash originally come from? If it
Hey,
didn't come out of the
flow-
bank?
Cash is fungible. So for me to tell you the source of when it comes from, when you go to Publix and you buy something, you get $50, you throw it in there. It's been my whole life. When I took out a large amount of money on my first campaign, I kept some of the cash of that. Like, to tell you I just have cash in my house, I don't have as much.
So there's some question about that, about the money that she took out of her campaign and kept. I can't remember how much it was, but I think the records show she only paid a portion of that back. I don't know how campaign finance law works, so I don't know. Like, if you run for office and you don't win, do you just get to keep all that money? If somebody knows, could you pop that into the chat? Because that is something that I don't know. And I know Robert said he didn't know either. This is Robert's Rumble channel, Robert Goivea. He said he didn't know either. So if anybody's familiar with campaign finance law and what happens to all the money in the coffers if you don't win the election, or even if you do win it, does that now become your personal money? I mean, I'm a little reluctant to donate to campaigns if I think they're not going to win and they're just going to keep the money. That's just me, but I need to learn more about that
Today as I would normally have,
paid
but
something,
I'm
Nathan.
building back up now. So you just put money in. It's a very good practice. I would advise
Where does
it
it
to all
come
women.
from?
So you can't identify when you came into this cash or where the cash came from.
I didn't say I couldn't identify it. No, nobody
do it.
gives me anything. I am sure that the source of the money is always the work, sweat, and tears of me. What you asked me for is, when did the money go in there? What I am trying to tell you is, for many years, I have kept money in my house. That money in my worst days has probably only been $500 or $1,000. At my best days, I probably had $15,000 in my house at cash. At all times, there's going to be cash in my house or wherever I'm laying my head.
Where does it come
The
from?
money that you paid Mr. Wade, the cash, in October of 2022, you do not know where that money came from.
I do know where it came from. It came from my sweat and tears.
You know
A bank?
which job it came from. Did it come from Fulton County or did it come from a private
It
job?
came from, what are you talking about?
I'm not a lawyer.
So it could have come from a private job, because before I was DA, I was in private practice. So I earned money during that time period. That's probably in there.
You don't
It
know
could
where-
have, what do you mean I don't know where it came from? I
I
absolutely,
understand the situation. We can move on.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Same with Aruba. You don't know where that cash came from either, right?
ma'am, you are mischaracterizing my testimony greatly. I'm not going to allow you to mischaracterize my testimony.
Well, then where did it come
I know
from?
that I keep money in my house. The amounts of money I gave Mr. Wade, it was never that serious. I don't think I've ever handed him more than $2,500 in a reimbursement. So we're not talking about $20,000 in cash. I don't have $20,000 in cash right now.
$2,500's a lot of cash
most
to
I ever
carry
gave
around.
him, I know I gave him $2,500 when we went to Belize, because we went to one
Wasn't the Belize
hotel
trip more than
and
that?
then we went to a second hotel. That $2,500 I actually gave him while we were still in Belize. I know that the Aruba trip, the one that you described with his mom, I think I gave him about $2,000 for that trip, for like total.
His mom went to Aruba with you?
The Aruba trip. So I
Yeah, she
consider
said
that
that.
to be one trip. So we got off of a cruise ship and then we went to Aruba, which is why I cannot remember, is that the time
Lot
that
of
we had to
vacays,
stay in Miami
yeah.
to wait for the flight for Aruba.
So how many times did you go with Mr. Wade to California?
Once.
And you all stayed in Napa Valley and he paid for the plane tickets and the hotel?
He paid for the plane tickets and the hotel.
And what did you pay for on that trip?
I gave him much less cash that time, probably $400 or $500, and then I paid for a bunch of stuff. I think we did 2 different wine tours
Yeah.
that you do, which are pretty expensive. He likes wine. I don't really like wine, to be honest with you. I like Grey Goose. I bought him a bottle of wine while we were there. And the sippings that you do, I can't remember how many, like 4 or 5 different places you go. I remember we
She
went
named
to
the brand. Oh gosh.
to this place that they do pairings. That was the most expensive thing that I think that we did while we were there. So they would pair champagne,
I'm sure it was great.
chocolate,
Wrap it up.
and champagne, chocolate, and caviar. It was a 3, and it was like 3 different things. Sweden, Russia, someplace else. I'll
So
make
it's
that
very
up.
expensive, right?
But that was the most expensive thing we did that trip, and I paid for
You pay cash?
us doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to ask you. Your security detail, did they take you to and from your house? Condo, I'm sorry.
Since
And
March of
where you lay your head? Did they take you to and from where you lay your head?
99% of the time.
Would they take Mr. Wade to and from wherever you laid your head?
That has never in the history of ever happened, ever, okay?
Your security team has never taken him?
From my house, that's a lie.
I'm
That's
asking
another,
if they've ever taken him anywhere.
and I'm telling you that that's never happened.
So
Okay.
your security team has never taken Mr.
My
Wade anywhere?
security team has never taken Mr. Wade from any place where I have lived and brought him here.
She just asked the
Never,
question.
not once, not ever.
Thank you.
Have they ever taken the 2 of you together?
To where?
Anywhere.
Well, we've left this building and gone to lunch, but I go to lunch so rarely that is a very rare occasion, I am sure. And let me be clear, it wouldn't just be Mr. Wade. So I'm sure my security team has taken me to lunch. Probably been a time I've left here 7 o'clock, gone to get something to eat. And I don't even know that they would have taken him or if he would have driven himself.
I mean, do you even remember what the question was at this point? I would have to ask if it were me. I'm sorry. I've talked so much. I've bloviated so extensively that I don't even remember what I'm supposed to be answering.
But they've taken me to do that.
You're
but we're
using your
talking
security team for your lover?
very few, very far in between. Most days I don't even eat lunch. And when I do, it's because my assistant has heated up some bag, something, and I eat through meetings and eat in my office.
Yeah, a cup
It's
of
not a
noodles.
practice of mine to go to lunch.
Yeah,
During the time period that you were dating, would your security team ever take you two together anywhere?
No,
Okay, you have to file as part of your job something called an income and financial disclosure report, correct?
that's correct.
Here we go.
And you filed your first one, so you filed 2 to date, is that right?
Is it 2 or 3? I probably would have filed 21, 22, and
Let's see, you filed your first one, it looks like
April,
April 15th, 2022, and your second one, April 17th, 2023. Does that sound familiar?
I don't remember the dates, but you're an officer of the court. I'm gonna hope you're telling the truth now.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Thank you. I already gave the state a copy, exhibit 20 and 21, if you take a look at those.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
so
ma'am.
those are the ones that you filed.
This looks like me for sure.
Judge, we'd move to admit 20 and 21.
All right. Any objection to exhibits 20 and 21?
Nope. I'm
She
sorry.
says
From other
nope.
council, admitted without objection.
When did your
Yeah,
romantic
romantic.
relationship with Mr. Wade end?
My
Did it
re-
end?
Me and Mr. Wade, we are good friends.
Just say it.
I think that you have cemented that we'll be friends to the day we die.
When the romantic relationship ended, that's the question.
It sometime in, I'd say late summer of 2023. This is what you're really asking about. This is the salaciousness of all of this, right?
No, I'm just
When
asking
you're
about your
re-
romantic relationship, when you stopped dating.
I think that me and Mr. Wade, so he's a man, he probably would say June or July. I would say we had a tough conversation in August. And so that men in relationships at the end of physical intimacy, women in relationships when that tough conversation takes place.
Did he come to, I guess, the condo? I'm not sure what you called it, condo apartment. Would he come and stay at that condo or visit you there? I'm sorry, visit you there.
What condo, what apartment? I want to be clear.
So not your house. I know you classified one as house and one as condo. So I'm trying to use those terms.
So, but there's been more to understand is because of this case, I got to move.
Has he ever visited you at the place you laid your head?
So let's be clear, because you lied in this, let me tell you which one you lied in, right here. I think you lied right here. No. This is the truth.
Judge,
And
this
it
is-
it is a lie. It is a lie.
Ms. Willis.
You see,
Mr. Sano, thank you. We'll
Bad.
take
That's
5
not
minutes.
good.
Be back in 5.
That's not good, man. Fanny's losing her bananas. She's going to have a phone call, a conversation with these prosecutors. They're going to,
may I go to the bathroom?
oh, sorry. All right. Sorry, Judge. Sorry about that, Judge. Sorry, Judge. All right. Please be seated.
All right.
Thank you.
We're back on the record.
How
Also for her.
often did Mr. Wade visit you at a place where you were living between 2019 and 2021?
So you want to start with the lie that he lived with me in South Fulton in 2019, a home he's never been to? That's one lie you told in your
Judge,
document.
I-
No.
Judge, I didn't ask her about that.
Ms. Merchant, I want you to ask a very precise question. I think she's saying and answering that he did not live with her. So why don't we break that up into smaller
Ever.
parts?
I didn't ask about living.
But you put in your,
Did-
while we're talking about professionalism, no, while we're talking about
This is
professionalism,
bad.
she put in 3 different documents
Well,
he
she'll
lived
have
with
a
me.
full opportunity to respond.
She's talking to the judge
And
about
filed
that.
that with the court.
In
Professionalism.
2019,
He's never been to South Fulton. In 2019,
Great.
I lived in South Fulton. He has never been to my residence in 2019, ever, not once. Let me help you out. I lived there in 2020. He never came to my house in 2020, let alone live with me, as you put falsely in these documents. In the first 3 months of 2021, when I could still enjoy my home, Mr. Wade never came to South Fulton, and it is certainly a lie that he lived with me.
Ashley just letting her go,
so
which is
in
right.
2020, so you said 2019, 2020, did Mr. Wade ever visit you at a place that you
He has
resided?
never been to my home in South Fulton. 2020 was before I knew that a phone call was going to be made and I was going to have to abandon my home. As a result thereof, he never visited, lived at, came to, or has seen South Fulton.
You qualified that with your home in South Fulton.
That's where I lived in 2020.
In 2020, did he ever visit you at a place that you resided?
Okay. I don't understand. You're going to have to give me guidance. In 2020, I
she's-
lived in South Fulton.
Okay.
That's the only place I lived in South Fulton. That's before I had to abandon my home.
She's
Judge.
talking to the
All right.
judge
And
now.
at my
Well,
home
I
in
think we're gonna
South
clarify
Fulton,
this. We'll break it
Miss,
down.
he never came there. Okay. So if you
Miss
don't come
Willis.
someplace, you can't live there.
Ms. Willis, that's, I'm
Fanny.
gonna have to caution you. This is gonna be the first time I have to caution you. We have to listen to the questions as asked. And if this happens
Not
again and
good.
again, I'm gonna have no choice but to strike your testimony.
Not good for
So
Fanny.
we need to break this down. Ms. Merchant's
Not good.
question, I believe, was asking whether you lived
Pounding the
anywhere
table.
other than South Fulton.
Pounding the table. Very freaked out.
I did not live anywhere but South Fulton, Georgia in 2020. That is
Miss-
before I began my prosecution of this case. And it was my plan to only live there.
Did Mr. Wade ever visit you at the condo that you leased from Miss Yurdi?
He visited that condo, yes.
He did.
Yes.
There we go.
Did he ever spend the night at that condo?
No.
Okay.
Just visited.
Yeah, but he did visit for sure.
Did you ever go out to eat together, other than the lunches you talked about,
In
during
2020?
2019 or 2020?
I don't
Warming
remember it, but it seems like we would have broke bread sometime in 2019.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say yes, although I have no recollection. But it seems to me like I go out to eat and drink with pretty much everyone. So I'm going to say yes.
Even though you're
Outside
scared
of the
of your
vacations
security.
that we've already talked about, did you ever go out to dinner with Mr. Wade?
I mentioned to you that
I'm
I've,
gonna object as to what time period. Like, we're asking very vague questions. I thought we were treating the witness as hostile under 611. We're no longer doing that. So we're gonna go back and forth. We need to be more specific with our questions if we're gonna treat her as hostile.
All right, Ms. Merchant, it's not so much. I think you can elect between leading and open-ended questions, but I think we are still wondering. I think we need to get back on track of focusing on the financial benefit or the relationship.
And my next question about if you did go out to dinner, who paid when you went out to dinner?
he paid, I paid.
You both paid. Did you ever pay him through Cash App?
No.
You only ever paid him through cash.
Yes.
The only money you've ever given him outside of a contract is cash.
I didn't give him money in a contract, so that was cute, but I didn't give him money outside in a contract. What happened? No, we're going to answer it since you said it. He worked more hours than he was.
Okay, see, so right here, this is semantics. This is where she's trying to say that the attorney is a liar. He was paid via contract, that she initiated the contract on behalf of Fulton County to get him in the case, and he was paid for that contract. All of us understand that when the attorney says you paid not the money that you paid him by the contract, she's like, I never paid him by the contract. We understand her to say, and Fanny should say, I think what you're meaning is, or what I'm trying to say is, Fulton County paid that contract. I didn't pay that contract. But that's not what the attorney is asking anyway.
Paid, and
You
the
approved the
county
contract.
paid him for the work that he did.
Yeah, but you
So,
approved the contract.
Don't be
Fanny.
cute with me and then think that you're not going to get an answer.
Don't get cute
And I
with
will
me.
ask you about the contract in a minute. I asked you about cash. Did you ever pay him anything? And I'm trying to qualify my questions. I'm not talking about the contract with Fulton County that was paid. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about outside of that. Did you ever pay him anything other than cash?
I've only given him cash a few times in the course of what we're talking about.
So you've
If
never
we
used
would
a
go to
credit card?
dinner,
Let her finish her answer.
if we would go to dinner, I wouldn't give him cash because he paid for dinner or I paid for dinner. I've given him cash only a few times in life, probably 4.
Okay.
Probably the most money I've ever handed him is $2,500.
Yeah.
The least amount of money I've handed him, probably between $500 and $1,000.
You never wrote him a check?
Ma'am, I don't have checks.
Okay. So you have no proof of any reimbursement for any of these things because it was all cash, right?
The testimony of one witness is enough to prove a fact.
So my
Are
question
you
was,
telling
do
me
you
that
have
I'm
any
lying to you?
proof?
Is that what you're intimating right here?
I'm asking if you have any proof that you paid him any of these
The proof
monies.
is what I just told you.
You have no
The testimony of one honest witness is enough to prove a fact. I don't know if that falls, if that's true for every witness. I'm sure it is not. I mean, they've impeached her over and over again with the testimony of others, with the geofencing data, with the phone records. And I just don't understand why she lied. The worst she would have gotten in trouble for was if she had just been straight up from the beginning and said, yes, we were in a relationship. The law is really kind of iffy if she would have even gotten in trouble for that, because they're referring to this nepotism statute when giving contracts or when awarding contracts. And it's pretty clearly defined that it has to be a family member. He's not a family member. So if she had just been straight up about it from the beginning, she wouldn't be in any trouble right now. But the fact that she lied about it from the beginning, lied about it in the interrogatories, lies about it in her testimony, this is what's going to get her in trouble.
No written proof. Is that correct?
No other substantiating documents.
So I have probably some transactions like in Belize. I probably spent $500 on my card. I did the $700. I probably got some minor expenses in Aruba that would be on a card. But for the most part, for those trips, so the 2 cruises, I gave him money for those before we ever left, because they were pre-booked. Let me answer.
Well, the question was if you had any written proof. And so
I've answered you that I've had written
we
proof.
can move to the next question. If you've answered if we had any written proof, and that was my question.
I want to make sure that we're clear.
So that's how that works. I ask you a question, you answer it. Then I ask you another question and you answer it. The district attorney of Fulton County, for some reason, doesn't understand this concept. She is so worked up that she cannot control herself. It's something to see. I was so shocked by it.
That for the 2 cruises,
Judge,
and that's
I
the
asked if
cruise
she gave
plus
him written
Aruba.
proof.
We're not going to talk over each other. Ms. Merchant, she answered your question, so
She did?
we can ask the next question.
I don't
You
think
can- Ms.
she really
Willis,
did.
Ms. Cross will have plenty of opportunities to let you clarify your answers when it's her turn.
Thank you, Judge. Knowing your role as district attorney, you know that public funds are scrutinized and money is scrutinized and things like that. You
Absolutely.
And I've
understand.
never, I'm sorry, go
You
ahead.
understand you're under a microscope. You have reporting requirements, all of those types of things. When you took office, you had a tax lien of $4,600. Did you pay that with cash when you made that tax lien whole?
I probably paid through however you pay.
Okay. So, but you were saying that you had amounts of cash. You still had that lien in 2022 when you were dating Wade and going on these trips.
Why don't you pay that
So
down?
the cash that you gave him, that could have been used to pay this tax lien off?
You gonna tell me how to pay my
I'm gonna
bills?
object. It's not relevant as it relates to why we're here today.
Did you tell anyone at Fulton County Board of County Commissioners about your relationship with Mr. Wade?
No,
Of course not.
Did you disclose your relationship to anybody at Fulton County?
no, I don't think so.
No, you didn't.
And as the chief law enforcement officer of Fulton County, I assume that you're familiar with the county code.
Well, now, wait a minute. She says she didn't reveal this to anybody at Fulton County, but her friend who worked in the office, if I'm understanding that correctly, knew all about the relationship from 2019. And she worked directly for Fannie Willis. Fannie's the one who fired her.
Code and ordinances.
I've
With
said
the
we're not
law?
going to cover that in this hearing, Ms. Merchant.
Let me ask you this then. So are you aware that you're required to disclose any relationship with someone that you contract with in Fulton County?
I'm gonna object to the court prior ruling that you made this morning. You made
Would this be different because it's a potential for impeachment?
Yes.
Yeah, and it's going into her prior
What did you ask me?
disclosure records. She had
Are you
disclosure
aware
forms.
that Fulton County requires you to disclose any relationship with someone that you're doing business with?
I'm not aware, and I know often that things are confused with state constitutional officers in county, but I'm not aware.
What you said was you won't sleep with people who work under you. Do you not consider
Okay,
Mr.
she said she wasn't aware that she needed to divulge this relationship. Was she also not aware that she needed to answer the questions about the relationship honestly in the interrogatory, the questionnaire that she had to fill out before she went to court? Is she also not aware that she needs to give honest testimony right now? Does it not occur to her that someone's going to subpoena these phone records and get the geofencing data? Like, that's what I'm talking about as far as narcissism and arrogance. She thinks she is so much smarter than everyone else, but they basically undid her testimony through normal investigative measures. So just something to think about.
Wade working under you?
I consider Mr. Wade to be an agent.
Okay,
Agent?
that's
Yeah.
a legal
An
term.
appointee is what I really think of him as.
Your point, whatever merit it has, Ms. Merchant, is on the record.
Okay,
Next question.
judge wants to move on.
All right, Mr. Sadow.
This is Trump's lawyer, Steve Sadow.
I'm going to try to ask you questions that you can actually answer without having to explain. Okay?
Good luck,
Yes,
Steve.
sir. My comprehension skills are pretty good, so we should do all right.
I don't know about
We
that.
shall soon see.
We shall soon
If
see.
I heard you correctly, you moved into what I will refer to as the Yurti condo in either March or April of 2021. Is that correct?
Sometime between late February and April. Yes, I don't, just so we're clear. Yes, but in that time period, you're in the ballpark. We're in the ballpark.
And is that Yurti condo, would you say that it is in Hapeville?
It is in Hapeville. Yes, sir.
And you moved in there for safety reasons?
Yes.
Was your father still living in your house at the time you moved to what I would refer to as the Yurti condo?
Yes, sir. He was due to his concerns related to COVID.
Okay. The safety concern was that there was potential danger at your house. Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay, so anyone staying at your house in the time period after you went to the Yerti condo was still in danger, correct?
yeah, what, no,
Answer.
I think you have to, it's your attorney, Ms. Willis. Sorry, Mr. Body, your objection is speculation to the question
it ain't
of
speculation.
It's not speculation. Fanny just said it.
whether someone was still in danger at her condo.
I can read,
Just let her answer the question.
Or Mr. Sadon wants to rephrase. So
No, yeah,
I'm not sure.
I was able to
I've got
understand it.
She's
I've got
overruling her
the
own attorney.
objection, And then I have,
I'll withdraw the objection.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and I remember the question, so I can answer it. Yes, I was very concerned.
Oh, sorry. This guy must be from her team. Because then they come back and some of the other lawyers have questions for her that are on the team of all the defendants.
About my father still living at the house.
Not that concerned.
However, if you have dealt with an older gentleman, he was not leaving the house, despite my urging him that I thought he should leave as well. He did not want to leave the house because he was particularly worried at his age about COVID. I was not happy with that decision of my father's, but I can't ultimately make him leave. And he stayed there too long, in my opinion.
okay, thank you. Did Nathan
Needed her
Wade
special prosecutor to
visit
console
you
her.
at the Yerti condo from the time you moved in until he was hired on November the 1st of 2021?
Yeah, I'm sure he came to visit. I can remember us going, I think the restaurant's Lickety Split. I can remember him picking me up, going to Lickety Split and ordering some food and coming and sitting at my table and eating.
thought he
So
said they
I
had to
remember
leave.
times that he visited me at that condo. Yes.
Okay, could you give us an approximation of how many times Mr. Wade visited you at the condo between the time you moved in and prior to November 1 of 2020?
I don't think often, but I don't want to speculate.
Can we say more than 5, more than 10?
Let's say more than 10, but I'm not sure that that's even accurate. He certainly has come and picked me up. I don't remember him being in that condo a lot.
How many times did Anna Cross come to
Yeah.
that condo between the time you moved in and November 1st of 2021?
Anna's right behind
I don't
him.
think Anna's ever been to that condo.
Of course not.
What about any other prosecutor that's involved in the prosecution of this case?
I don't think any of them have.
Of course
Just
not.
Mr. Wade.
That's correct, sir.
Yep. Why? He wasn't there for.
But it was a
personal
lonely
business.
time.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That 2021.
Depressed, man.
I have a lot of guilt about this time period in my life. Let me tell you why. But yes, it was a lonely time.
Okay.
I was very appreciative to the citizens for giving me this responsibility and this duty. But what I very, very quickly learned is that this is a very isolating job, and 2021 was a lonely time. I turned 50 in 2021. That's probably one of the worst birthdays I've ever had. I spent it alone. So
man.
I have a clear recollection of 2021 being lonely.
Did Mr. Wade ever come visit you at the condo in the time period I'm talking about, prior to November of 2021, when Miss Yerti was at the condo?
So Miss Yurdi and me, we didn't share the condo at the same time,
So the answer would be no.
but we never stayed there together. So it's an
I'm saying-
impossibility.
It's an impossibility.
No.
Yeah.
So when I ask you about Mr. Wade visiting the condo, when
Yes.
you were staying there,
Yes.
Miss Yerti wasn't staying there, correct?
That would be correct. Yes.
She wouldn't be at the condo, correct?
No, she would not have been.
It would be you and Mr. Wade alone at the condo.
That's it.
Correct?
Yes.
That is,
Indicting
there
each
weren't
other.
any other witnesses to Mr. Wade and you at the condo, correct?
Yes.
No security, none of your security detail.
No.
Object. She said it was just her and Mr. Wade.
You made your point, Mr. Sadow. Let's move on to the next one.
No one else.
Yes, Your
Jared?
Honor. You hired Mr. Wade for the first time on November 1st of 2021, correct?
February of 2021. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
He divorced
Your
the next day.
testimony is that at the time you hired Mr. Wade, there had never been a romantic relationship with Mr. Wade before you hired him, correct?
Yes. My testimony is that we were very good friends, but not. Well, we're talking about a sex, so let's just don't.
No, I'm not talking about, I'm saying romantic relationship doesn't necessarily have to be just sex.
Well,
It can
I
be
don't-
dating, it can be holding hands, it can be
Smoochy,
any
smoochy?
of those things that one might
Fanny slaps.
call romantic.
Hey,
I'm
Mama.
asking you whether or not prior to November 1st of 2021, there was a romantic relationship with Mr. Wade. It's very simple. It's either a yes or a no.
I don't consider my relationship with him to be romantic before that. I'm not a hand holder, so no.
Okay, that's fine.
She just wants to jump in the
Move
bed.
beyond November 1st of
Yes.
2021. If I understand your testimony, there was no romantic relationship with Mr. Wade until early in 2022, whether it be January or February or March, early in 2022, correct?
I would say sometime between February and April. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now I'm asking you about that time period when it became romantic.
Yes, sir.
Okay? You didn't see the need, if I understand, to tell any of the people on the prosecution team when you had established a romantic relationship with Mr. Wade that the lead prosecutor, that is the man that was basically giving orders to others, was dating with you, correct?
I'm going to object to relevance at this point, Your Honor.
Mr.
Not
Sedano,
relevant.
relevance.
We're attempting to show that there is an issue on the credibility about the relationship. The failure to have informed anyone on her team that she was having a romantic relationship with the lead prosecutor, I suggest gives rise to that inference.
They're covering it up.
Relevance.
The inference that
The inference that they were concealing this
Yeah, they were
because
covering it up.
it was not as it's been characterized to the court, and that in fact it started earlier than what they say.
Yep.
all right, overruled, Mr. Sedano.
Yep.
At that time, did you tell any other prosecutors on the prosecution
I
team?
never tell people at work who I'm dating.
All right, Mr. Sedano.
Okay. Were you ever in DC at the same time as Mr. Wade?
I was not.
On personal or business?
No, me and Mr. Wade have not been to DC at the same time. However, since Mr. Wade has been on this case, he's been to DC.
Yeah, talking with White House
Since
counsel.
Mr. Wade has been on to this case.
Yes.
I've been to DC. What has not happened is we
Let's
have not
go.
been in the District of Columbia
Ask about
at
that.
the same time.
Please ask
Now,
about that.
the only thing I'm not sure about
What were
with
you
what
doing
you
there?
asked me is if I've been to DC personally, because I got a lot of personal friends in that area. But I know that I have been to DC.
My next question is based on her opening the door, and therefore I'll
Yes,
just ask it,
let's
and Your
go.
Honor can decide whether or
Yep.
not it's appropriate.
He's
When you
probably gonna
went to
kick it out.
DC, did you go to the White House?
Yep.
I did not go to the White
We knew it was
House.
coming.
No, well,
Apparently, I'm going to get the answer anyhow.
there you have it. Next question.
Okay.
Breaking up
I'm not
smart,
going to get
man.
into the conversation per
We
se.
should.
Okay, let's do it.
Well, if he doesn't want to, we won't go there. So, Mr. Sedano, next question.
You know, it's kind of hard to say no when you've got that opportunity.
Yeah, let's go. I want to now.
All I'm going to say is, was it pre-indictment in this case?
So,
We know the timeline that the indictment was delivered.
okay,
Well,
but-
actually,
and
no,
so that
I'll
we're
give you that.
clear, the
Okay.
physical relationship ended pre-indictment.
And is that when you were talking about the tough conversation?
But
Was-
I'm not sure that the tough conversation didn't happen until after, but the physical relationship. So I'm sure if you ask Mr. Wade, because he's a male, he would say we
What's
ended
going-
June or July because
This is
physical
ridiculous.
contact ended then. Just in my mind, being a woman, it's over when you have that like hard conversation. I just think women and men think differently.
And
Well,
I think the
that's
answer,
what
Mr.
she said.
Sedano, to your question was she's not sure whether it was before or after the indictment.
Well, I'm not sure that was her answer, but let's see if I can get specific.
That is what I said.
Did the forthcoming indictment have anything to do with that?
Oh,
Or was it just a coincidence?
Let's go on and have the conversation.
I've just asked you whether or not it was a coincidence.
Had
or-
absolutely nothing to do with this. It's interesting that we're here about this money. Mr. Wade is used to women that, as he told me one time, the only thing a woman can do for him is make him a sandwich. We would have brutal arguments about the fact that I am your equal.
Does she strike you as the person who would date a man who said that the only thing a woman can do for me is make a sandwich? Does it seem like her ego would allow for that? Because I don't see that happening.
I don't need anything from a man. A man is not a plan.
Whoa.
A man is a companion. And so there was tension always in our relationship, which is why I would give him his money back. I don't need anybody to foot my bills. The only man who's ever foot my bills completely is my daddy.
Can you imagine being in a relationship with her? She is insufferable. And she's supposed to care about this guy. And listen to how she talks about him. You know, supposedly she said, this has cemented our friendship forever. I couldn't be friends with somebody who talked about me like that. And she thinks this is totally acceptable.
Is there
Okay.
anything else you would like to add to that?
No.
I realize that you've testified that you have no records that with regard to cash payments,
Yes.
correct?
Mhm.
Would your bank records reflect that you withdrew cash from your
Oh, good
bank
question.
accounts during the time period of 2020, 2021, 2022, or 2023? I'm not asking you, I'm just asking whether they would reflect that you withdrew cash from any of your bank accounts.
So the exact amounts.
No,
But yeah,
that you did.
of course, I withdrew money throughout that time period. Throughout my life, I withdrawn money from the bank.
That's
Yes,
what we
of
were
course.
asking
Talking
you
about
before.
cash. That is that you go to a
Cash,
bank
right.
or you go to an ATM
Cash.
and you take cash out.
Either that way, or you go to Publix and you overpay, or you go to another store and you overpay. So yes, both through that. Yes, of course,
A
they
cash
would reflect
withdrawal
that
from
at
a debit.
times.
Okay. And so those records, if we had them, would show that, correct?
That throughout the course of my life, I took out money.
I was very specific. I said
Yes, during the course
2020.
of that time period, I would have taken money out. Yes.
So do you have a problem with?
Absolutely, yes.
You don't want the bank records to be made available for the court and the court alone. The Belize trip was for
His 50th birthday.
his 50th birthday, and
So-
you paid for it.
100%. What my recollection is, I took about 4 in cash with me,
Just to be clear, to end this up, the 4,000 that you've just told us.
but I didn't give it all to him. Remember, I only gave the 2,500 to him.
I didn't ask you that. I was going to ask you that 4,000 is part of my words, cash hoard that you had collected over time.
Cash what?
Hoard, HORDE.
Oh, I thought you said something different, sir.
No, I'm afraid I wouldn't say that. When you had money at your house,
I had money wherever I was staying, wherever I was laying my head. Yes, sir.
that's all I have. Thank you.
Nicely done, Steve Sadal. That's Trump's lawyer.
So what'd you think? I thought it was the most, I guess he didn't show the rest of it. I thought it was some of the most interesting testimony I've seen. And I like watching things like that. I watched the Amber Heard Johnny Depp thing, and I just found it fascinating, the way she would dodge the truth. And I mean, I felt I'm not a big Johnny Depp fan, not a Johnny Depp fan really at all, but Amber Heard was just so fake. It was so evident that, that she wasn't being honest. She wasn't being forthright about the degree to which the violence was coming from her end. And they're both a hot mess. I mean, those two can handle their own garbage, but I mean, this is a real thing that affects us, so I'm really interested in it. I would love to just sit here all night and play Wade and Terrence, and then the friend of hers who testified that they were in a relationship since 2019. But Robert Goivea, that's whose channel we're watching. They're Watching the Watchers. So if you just go to Rumble and type in Watching the Watchers, or even YouTube, he's on YouTube as well, Watching the Watchers. He's got the testimonies all broken down by person. So he's got Fanny's dad. He's got Nathan Wade, who's the guy she's carrying on with, who's the special prosecutor. Terrence is Wade's divorce attorney. And then there's a few other ancillary people that weren't that interesting. If you're only going to watch 3, it's this one, Wade and Terrence. And I'm so tempted to watch Terrence with you just because the Trump lawyer, or not the Trump lawyers, his lawyers, the lawyers for this case that are representing, I guess, Fulton County or Fanny, threw him under the bus at the end. And it was done in such shocking form. You know what? Hold on. I'm going to pull it up. And we'll just watch that part of it. I just was like, oh my gosh, that didn't just happen. Hold on. This is Terrence. But like I said, Robert does a great job with these videos. Please go and subscribe to Robert's channel. It is worth your time. All right, where's he at? Terrence, there he is. We're not going to watch this whole thing.
Terrence Bradley's back up.
Before I begin,
Wait, so let me give the backstory here. So Terrence Bradley had given testimony initially, and then they subpoenaed him to come back on this court date, and he was supposed to be there and didn't show up. Was at a doctor's appointment, was his, what he said. But you can't just not show up for, I mean, if you're in the hospital, okay. But a doctor's appointment, no, that is not an excuse. And he was supposed to be there at 9:00 or something. Then he was going to be there at 12. Then he didn't get there till 1. And the judge was so mad at that point that he was talking about holding them in contempt of court. So the judge has got no patience with Terrence. Terrence is the divorce attorney of Nathan Wade, and they're also friends. They were also in the same law practice together for a time, and then they parted ways. And so he basically testifies that, yes, these two were seeing each other. And then there's a lot that he can't testify on because they can't really identify what's privileged or not in court. So a lot of that was done off camera. We don't see that. but I'm going to take you to the, so initially he reached out to Trump's lawyer to spill the beans like a whistleblower, right? And so he was going back and forth with Ashley, who's that lawyer. I think that's Trump's lawyer. It might be one of the other defendants, but it's one of the other defendants. He reached out to her and said, hey, I've got information here contradicting what they're saying. I was a partner in the law practice for some time. And so they went back and forth, this lawyer and he went back and forth about his testimony, about what he knew, what he could prove, all this other stuff. They had him in initially, he gave testimony. Then they recalled him. Well, something happened in the time between his initial testimony and them recalling him, where you can see he has this change of heart, and it's like he's testifying for the Fulton County lawyers now, because now he can't remember. He's not sure. Did I say that? I mean, when you say talk, what do you mean by talk? All that semantics kind of stuff. And so I think he's thinking, so somebody from a legal team sent him a note, like a text that said, it kind of felt like a threat. You better remember your privilege, meaning the privileged communications between he and Nathan Wade. And so now he's got this whole change of heart, and it's like he's not working with Ashley like he was before. Now he's working with the other side, trying to save his butt. And let me show you what the other side does to him. Let me see how long this is, 37. We're going to watch the last 10 minutes of it.
By you or him against each other.
You know what he's asking?
We had a disagreement, yes.
Yes.
Had that disagreement have anything to do with Miss Willis?
He's talking about Nathan Wade. He and Nathan Wade had a falling out. They're talking about why the practice split up.
Oh, no.
Okay. Did it have anything to do with your conduct?
No.
Did it have
What-
anything to do with his conduct?
Hold on, wait. So we had a disagreement, whether the disagreement was, we disagreed.
About what?
And so we dissolved, I left the firm.
It's a lot of work to do
And
that.
was the disagreement having anything to do with alleged or supposed misconduct by either one of you?
The disagreement is mine to know. I mean, I don't see the relevance of the disagreement that I had.
Ruh-roh.
It had nothing to do with this Trump case or any other case.
I'm
You're in
simply
court.
getting a question asked, what was the disagreement? It's not privileged, correct?
No, that is privileged
Oh, it is privileged.
It
Why
is.
is that privileged?
because it's privileged. I can tell the court in camera, but it was privileged.
Ask a few questions further to see if this is.
So it's not privileged. He just doesn't want to say it out loud in front of the world. And you're going to find out why.
actually something that does fall within that privilege. We can take it from there.
It was
Were you-
furtherance of his
Did it have
divorce.
anything to do with you representing Mr. Wade in any capacity?
It would fall in that line, yes.
But your testimony is that it has nothing to do with your representation of Mr. Wade in connection with Miss Willis,
As it a connection to Miss Willis, that's correct.
connected to
The divorce
the matter for which you were hired by Mr. Wade?
I wasn't hired by Mr. Wade.
for the
Okay, so he is supposedly the divorce lawyer. He's not the lawyer on record. It comes out in this testimony, I think earlier, that Wade never paid him anything and they never had a contract for representation. Now, that doesn't mean that there's no privilege. They can agree to do this for each other because they're partners in a business. Wade was representing him on some things too. I'm guessing they were just doing this for each other in trade. But he should have just been honest about that. And he wasn't. So that then makes you wonder what else is going on.
divorce.
I thought you were the attorney representing him in the divorce.
Oh, I apologize. I thought you were saying something else. Oh, yes. So will it apply as to whether I was hired during the divorce? Yes, that's correct.
We'll
what this
see.
correct
That better be
means
honest,
under
man.
that.
The judge is
You
gonna
kinda
see
got lost
this.
on it.
You asked the question.
Did not relate to your representation.
It will relate to my representation.
In the marriage case.
It does.
It does relate to the marriage.
Whose decision was it? At that point, did you stop representing Mr. Wade?
It wasn't at that point, no.
Was it before that?
No, it was after that.
Okay. And how much longer did you represent Mr. Wade in the divorce action?
I went to see the divorce proceeding to see Mr. Wade. I represented Mr. Wade after that. He represented me in a construction case for a time after that. And I would have to look at the filings. I ended up hiring new counsel for my construction case. But it wasn't right at that moment. It wasn't in a matter of weeks. It was I don't know.
Continued representing him in connection with the divorce case after you had the separation that you've made reference to.
He continued to, yes, and he continued to represent me on a construction case.
But the separation, at least in part, if I heard you correctly, and please tell me if I'm wrong, had something to do with your representation of him in the divorce case.
That is correct.
Okay. Now,
Crazy.
Mr. Wade has testified that he did not have a relationship, a personal relationship, a romantic relationship with Miss Willis until sometime early 2022. Okay? Do you possess information that counters that, that's inconsistent with that?
Any information Mr. Bradley has would be privileged, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Sada, I think we've.
Would such
covered this.
information be privileged in your mind? I'm asking whether I can ask that question and elicit a response which doesn't elicit the actual communications, which is what I'm attempting to
Okay.
do.
Yeah.
And if Your Honor says
sure.
I can't, then I'm finished.
And I
If-
think this was another aspect of what came up before, which is, in my mind, even confirming the existence of the information goes into privileged communications, whether he does or does not possess information. If it came from that relationship, that's part of the privilege as well. So if I make that clear, then
I don't think so,
Are you
Judge.
sustaining what the objection would be?
So what the judge is saying, so there's an allegation of an affair. So any conversation he would have had with Wade while Wade was still married and seeing Fanny would then be privileged because he's representing him in the divorce, though not on paper. I mean, it's technically okay. Ethically, it's pretty shady.
That's right. It'd be sustained on privilege. to that
And of course,
question.
all the questions that we're
Reserved for
talking
the record.
about as far as the foundation about when things are said and what is said, you're going to go into, if I understood correctly, ex parte in camera with the two exhibits we've talked about.
That's right.
All right, couple more questions.
All right, moving on. Mr. Cromwell.
You were asked questions, Mr. Bradley, about the circumstances under which you left the firm. Do you recall?
Okay, this is Cromwell. So Cromwell is representing Fannie Willis and Fulton County, and this is the person that Wade now thinks he's working to benefit because he doesn't want to get in any trouble for something, right? They've got something on him. And that's why he turned on Ashley, couldn't remember anything all of a sudden. Oh, did I say that? I'm not sure that's right. I can't quite recall. And he thinks he's doing that to help these people out. And these people fixing to throw Terrence under the dang bus, man. And then run him over with it when they're done.
All those questions?
I do.
All right. And you left the firm. The firm remained the same as far as other employees, Mr. Wade, Mr. Campbell, as the named partners of the firm. You were the one who left, correct?
That is correct.
And you termed it as a disagreement. Do you recall answering questions as though you left due to a disagreement? Yes.
Yes,
And that disagreement was that there was an allegation of sexual made against you, correct?
that is incorrect.
There was not an allegation that you assaulted us, that you sexually assaulted one of the employees in the firm.
Whoa.
Incorrect, but yes, yes.
Wow.
Yes, there was an allegation that you sexually assaulted a member of the firm, correct?
Yes, there was an allegation. Yes,
And as a result of that allegation, you left.
I did.
You were no longer business partners with Mr. Wade.
That is correct.
Wow.
The firm remained intact, and in fact, the employee involved remained with the firm, correct?
I'm not certain of that.
So Nathan's the
They
good
did
guy.
leave the building, of course.
This guy's the bad guy.
And I don't know, some of the employees did leave.
Mr. Bradley, you in fact paid that employee $20,000, correct?
That is incorrect as far as what was, no.
On or about the time that you left the firm, and on or about the time that the allegation of sexual assault was made against you, did you pay the person who had made the allegation of sexual assault any amount of money?
There was money left in an escrow that belonged to me. I don't know what that amount was.
And did that money that was left in the escrow that belonged to you, was that paid to the employee who said that you
I
suffered?
never gave any money. I left the money in the escrow account. What happened to that money? I don't know what happened to it.
For what
Amazing.
So the truth is, the money was put there for the purpose of paying her off because there was an accusation of sexual assault, which he denies, and there's no criminal charges on this. But apparently the what is that called? The accusation was credible enough that they needed to set up escrow and put money in that account so that she could be paid. Just saying.
Did you
Amazing.
leave the money in the escrow account when you left the firm?
There was no purpose.
If there's no connection to the money you left in the escrow account and the allegations of sexual assault that an employee of your firm made against you, why was it that you brought to my
Wow.
attention? Or why'd you respond the way you did about money in an escrow account when my question was, did you pay this employee any money?
This guy's getting it
I
from
didn't
everywhere.
hand any money. It was money from an escrow account.
Wow.
See that? Do you see what I'm saying with semantics? Did you pay this person? No. Well, I'm saying I didn't hand her money. There was money in an escrow account for this. That's evasive. It's lying. I mean, he's an attorney. The answer is yes or no. Yes, she was paid money based on this allegation that she made that was untrue and never proven. I left money in the escrow account, and that's the account that she was to be paid out of per an agreement made. That's all you have to say. And this is how you know people are not telling the truth. If you're telling the truth, you just put it out there and you say it. Yes, it's unpleasant and it's terrible, but he was never criminally charged with this, never convicted, and he may have thought, and I can see where a lot of men would feel this way. Whatever this amount of money is, it is worth the money to pay it rather than have my reputation ruined. Because even if you didn't do it, there's that stigma attached to you. And I think anybody could have understood that if he would have just been upfront about it. But the fact that you're playing semantics and I didn't hand her money, there was money in escrow, that was his money. This is what I'm talking about with this kind of unethical behavior on part of Fulton County, the attorneys, the agencies they contract with. They don't have ethics. It's so troubling.
My knowledge.
Your knowledge, where did the money in the escrow account go?
To the employee.
To that employee.
Yep. So this guy is getting totally screwed here. So he joined in with Nathan and the government, and they are sacrificing him to the other side.
Was there one allegation or one incident of sexual assault with this employee, Mr. Bradley, or was there more than one?
Just one incident.
Not two.
Wow.
To my knowledge, there were not two incidents. No.
Brutal. Should have
Was there
stuck with
another occasion
Ashley.
where you paid any money as a result of an allegation of sexual assault against you?
No.
Did you sexually assault any clients of your firm?
No.
Never.
Never.
Who's Anna Rodriguez?
Oh my gosh.
I don't even know that name.
Oh
Don't
my.
recall a client named Anna Rodriguez?
Oh my.
Anna
gosh.
Rodriguez? No, I do not.
Never met her.
I do not recall the name Anna Rodriguez.
All right, Ms. Cross.
This clearly goes to the bias that the witness has towards Mr. Wade
Just got
and other
destroyed.
individuals, his motive in
He's like,
Okay.
involvement.
he's like,
And
I
I
just.
believe it's an appropriate
They're-
avenue to pursue based on.
So you see what she's saying. She's trying to discredit him, saying that he was accused of sexual assault. He had to leave the firm. So anything that he said before is unreliable and can't be trusted. But the problem is they were able to back up some of the things he said with data that they've gotten since.
Exploring his credibility.
All right. At some point, though.
Burning him down.
I'm not
Well-
ready to go much further.
Okay.
Oh
Judge,
my
if this
gosh.
is allowed to continue in this way, and it does appear a little bit harassing, then is Mr. Bradley going to be excused from his privilege because this is not?
That's what I was gonna do. Don't do that.
Mr. Chover.
Sit on it. I think she's already done that.
Your Honor,
Open the
I'm
door.
asking in all seriousness that
And
privilege.
what's sad is look at the look on his face. They're laughing about this. His life just got wrecked. He paid this money to keep this from coming out, and I don't know if he did it or not. He just got totally wrecked because he turned and was trying to cover Nathan's back, cover Fanny's back. And so because he gave testimony that Fanny was pissed about, that she talked to Nathan Wade about in the conference room and ranted and raved about how Wade gave this testimony, well, now they're going to throw his ass under the bus. And he's got nothing to do with any of this, really. It's just terrible to see. And it's a lesson to us all. What you tell your lawyer is one thing. If you decide to turn and start working with the other side, if their whole goal is to win, and if throwing you under the bus, if slaughtering you on live television will accomplish it, that is exactly what they'll do. They are not your friends. Just like if you're talking to the police. Short answers, don't answer anything until you get an attorney there, because it is going to be used against you. And we're seeing this here. It's not a criminal case, but we see it here. And he, as a lawyer, should have known better. He should have had enough cunning to know that he was going to get the bad end of this.
Although
Based on the answer right now, I think now we've opened up a whole area.
Wow.
What he has just responded to, he previously said was privilege. That doesn't sound like privilege to me. We'll have to address that when we go back through the rundown. So, Ms. Cross.
I'm finished.
She's finished.
Okay.
They just botched
Mr.
that.
Stay down.
Holy moly. Oh my gosh. They just burned that dude to the ground.
Yeah, they did.
Honestly, he got backstabbed by the government. Unreal. This is what prosecutors
You were
do. Don't
accused
trust
by
them.
Mr. Wade of misconduct in the course of your representation of Mr. Wade, correct?
I was not accused by Mr. Wade, no.
Mr. Bradley previously testified that the reason he left the firm was totally and completely covered by privilege. To my mind, I don't see how it relates to privilege at all. And so now I'm left wondering if Mr. Bradley has been properly interpreting privilege this entire time.
Yep, you have not.
And I think the only way I can cure that is by having that in-camera conversation with him.
May I suspend my redirect for you to have that conversation?
I think that makes sense. But is there anything else, though, that you were going to cover other than this issue?
Holy moly.
Okay.
The government.
Ms. Cross, any reactions?
Only to, Your Honor, the premise of Mr. Sadow's question was that Mr. Wade accused Mr. Bradley of the sexual assault. That was not my question. I don't believe that's factual. Though there was an employee who accused Mr. Bradley of sexual assault.
Okay. But regardless, though, the point is that the circumstances of his departure from the firm, from what I've now heard, had nothing whatsoever to do with his representation of a divorce.
Absolutely not.
Is that fair?
Obviously.
My question, I believe the testimony has been that the circumstances of Mr. Bradley leaving the firm were related, I can't say how much, but certainly in a large part, based on the allegation of sexual assault that was made against him by an employer.
Sure. And his previous testimony was that was totally covered by privilege.
Yes, he lied.
Okay.
He lied. He lied on the stand.
right.
Terrence Bradley, this guy on the stand, he was, I thought, a good witness for the government. And then Anna Cross came out on cross and crossed him. Okay. Her last name is very apropos. Stabbed this dude in the back, okay? And this guy was on their team. So he then got phone calls from that other Gabe guy who was not called as a witness here in this evidentiary hearing. But Gabe also called him, and he admitted during the direct exam that he also got phone calls from other people reminding him about your privilege. Don't say anything or else you're going to get in trouble because you're covered by attorney-client privilege. And he hewed to that line. He stuck to that this entire trial.
So last Friday when I came on, that's what I had just watched. So I'd watched all of his testimony and watched him and haw. And I'm like, why is he flipping on this stuff that he was so sure about before? And then his own team just throws him under. It's like, oh my gosh, that's the meanest thing I've ever seen in a courtroom. Because it happened in such short time. You got to see that he was giving what I feel like was honest testimony initially, working with the defendants in the case, all these co-defendants that are charged with Trump, working with their lawyers. And then he's late for court, hours and hours late, and suddenly he comes in and he can't remember and he doesn't know. And I don't know if I would call it that. And, I didn't hand her the money. I didn't pay her. I didn't hand her the money. It was an escrow. So yeah, you did hand her the money. And then they just come in and they just cut this guy's throat. So now that allegation is out of sexual abuse. Now there's a name attached to it. Now it's not just one person, it's two people. He did not, and it might be totally untrue. He may not have done any of this, but they don't care. They want so badly to discredit him so that Fani Willis will stay in her position that if they got to sacrifice Nathan Wade to do it, they'll do it. And poor Nathan Wade fell right into it. Not Nathan Wade, Terrence. Poor Terrence fell right into it. It was such a chess move. And, as bad as I feel for the guy, because I don't know if he actually did this or, if this person just made that accusation to get money out of him. I don't know. We won't know because there's not been a criminal case and there won't be, I'm sure. But, giving him the benefit of the doubt that he's not been proven guilty of anything or charged, I just think he's got to be sitting there feeling the floor open up and suck him in. He's like, here I'm trying to protect privilege. And what do they do to make the case better for Fani and Nathan? They bring out this. And that sexual assault charge had nothing to do with Fani Willis, had nothing to do with the case before the court. They only pulled it out to gut him. And I just was like, oh my gosh, they are that dirty. It's so awful. I mean, it was like watching a soap opera. I was on the edge of my seat, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys saw that. Let me see if I've got any other pressing stories. Judge Engeron is accused of having sex with the secretary of opposing counsel in the Trump case. I think it's the Trump case. So now that weirdo's in trouble for that. I'm not going to go through that whole thing. The city council in New York is demanding investigations of Eric Adams' plan to give $10,000 in debit cards to illegal immigrants. I don't know what this guy's thinking. The people in New York are getting really upset because they're even losing out on benefits that they would have gotten, people that are struggling, because they're going to migrants. And so the climate is already tense. And then it came out that he was going to give these $10,000 debit cards. I think it's like, that's if it's a family of four. Let's look at that. Let me stop that screen share. Hold on just a little minute here. But yeah, he's in hot water. And I'm like, look, people expect to be able to access benefits that they are entitled to. And for you to give them to people who aren't citizens, of course, is going to throw heat your way. But he was just trying to keep it quiet. So just a few days ago, it was revealed that New York City Mayor Eric Adams is planning to give illegal border crossers debit cards worth up to $10,000. Now the city council is saying, not so fast. They want an investigation into the plan, particularly the no-bid bank deal that is the foundation of the measure. No bid. Who's involved in this no-bid deal? I guarantee you it's friends. People in New York must have questions too. You can imagine that members of the council got quite a few phone calls from angry residents of the city. As the blowback continues over Democrat Mayor Eric Adams' plan to give illegal border crossers and city shelters prepaid debit cards, ostensibly to use to buy food, they're being fed by the shelter, so I don't know why they would need money to buy food. Members of the city council have asked for an investigation into the scheme. Adams proposed his new policy early in February and insisted the program that would allow illegals to feed themselves would save the city millions of dollars in often wasted food service costs. The mayor estimated the prepaid cards would cost the city $53 million and would allow migrants to spend $35 per day or $1,000 a month to buy food to prepare for themselves. Oh, it's not $10,000 a month. It's a one-time $10,000. Well, currently it's one time, instead of being handed pre-made meals. So apparently the migrants are scoffing at the meals they have to eat, and they don't like the free food they're getting. And so he's like, well, let's just give them money and let them buy their own food because they're wasting all this food. My theory's always been hungry people don't waste food. One part of the program that has raised eyebrows, though, is the no-bid contract that Adams doled out to launch the program. According to WLNY-TV, council member Gail Brewer blasted the mayor for the contract award, saying, I think you should bid out to see who would do the best job at the best cost for taxpayers. Who can blame people for wanting to know more about what's happening? City Council calls for investigation. The $53 million contract would give Mobility Capital Finance, who the New York mayor touts as minority-owned, lots of fees for servicing, including $125,000 one-time setup to issue these cards. New York Post is reporting illegal migrants can get as much as $10,000 each in debit cards, and they're not required to spend that on food. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, how insane is Mayor Adams? Yeah, that's a great question. And I see why the people in New York are upset, especially people that are struggling. Did that not share that screen with you guys? Not going to do that story. Oh, yeah, we're going to do this Tucker Carlson story next. And I think we're going to close with that one. Not that. Is that it? I think that's it. Yeah. Make sure you guys can see. There you are. Okay. Just in, lefty journalist indicted on conspiracy charges for hacking Fox News and leaking Tucker Carlson videos. Progressive journalist Tim Burke was indicted and arrested on 14 federal crimes, including conspiracy charges for hacking Fox News and leaking the Tucker Carlson videos. Tim Burke, which I don't even know why he did it. Like, why would you risk going to jail? There was nothing damning in those videos. He previously worked for the Daily Beast and Deadspin. I think Deadspin's gone now. I'm not sure. Last year, behind-the-scenes videos of Tucker Carlson were publicly leaked. In one leaked video, Tucker Carlson talked about how he was triggered by Dominion's lawyer, who he called a slimy mother trucker, during his deposition. These leaked videos actually made everyone love Tucker even more. In this behind the scenes, that's where the video is there. You can see that. The Tampa Bay Times last year reported the FBI searched the home of Florida Democrat and lefty journalist Tim Burke after videos of Tucker Carlson were leaked and posted online. I'm surprised the FBI even investigated that. CNN reported Timothy Burke, a former journalist, has been charged with 14 federal crimes over the alleged hack and leaking of a series of unflattering behind-the-scenes clips of Tucker Carlson, according to an indictment unsealed Thursday. In the grand jury indictment, Burke was charged with 1 count of conspiracy, 6 counts of accessing a protected computer without authorization, and 7 counts of intercepting or disclosing wire, oral, or electronic communications. The 45-year-old was arrested Thursday morning and was expected to appear in federal court in Tampa. The charges against Burke, who denied breaking the law through his lawyers, followed a Justice Department criminal hacking probe opened last year after previously unaired videos from Carlson's former Fox News show surfaced online. In one unaired clip posted by Vice in 2022, Kanye West was seen making anti-Semitic remarks to Carlson. He makes anti-Semitic remarks everywhere. I don't know how that's news. The following year, after Carlson was fired from Fox News, the progressive watchdog Media Matters posted embarrassing behind-the-scenes footage of Carlson. I don't know why they're saying it's embarrassing. He wasn't embarrassed, and we all thought it was funny. Making crude remarks while joking with staff and denigrating the Fox Nation streaming service. So there's that. Oh, I don't want to do that story. I should do it, though. Hold on. Let me turn these off here. Okay, we'll do one more. And share. I don't know why those keep going down. Okay, here we go. Make sure you guys can see. Yep. Okay, FBI informant who blew the whistle on Biden Burisma bribery scheme arrested again on same charges. His lawyers asking the judge for an emergency hearing. Biden's revenge. Alexander Smirnov, the FBI's confidential human source who blew the whistle on Biden Burisma bribery scheme, was arrested again on the same charges on Thursday after federal prosecutors deemed him a flight risk. Smirnov, a dual citizen of Israel and the U.S., was previously released from pretrial detention by Las Vegas-based magistrate Judge Daniel Albrechts. Prosecutors urged Albrechts to keep Smirnov behind bars because he has ties to Russian intel officials who could help him flee. Of course, he has ties. He worked for the FBI, is that right? As a confidential human source. That was his job, to be connected to these people. They're making it sound like they just found out he was connected to these people, and that's not the case. They also claimed Smirnov had access to millions of dollars and could flee on an Israeli passport. Albrechts refused to detain Smirnov. He just wasn't buying what the federal prosecutors were alleging. So see, he's coming out with what he did was he turned over the information on Joe Biden and Burisma and all this money laundering that was going back and forth, even though that was his job to do that. Now they're saying he got this information and it's false Russian intel operation, and they're arresting him for it. But this is what they actually hired him to do. I understand the concern about foreign intelligence agencies potentially resettling Mr. Smirnov outside of the United States, his connections to them, but I think on some level that's speculative, Albrecht said, according to Politico. Because, as Mr. Chesnoff points out, I don't know what Mr. Smirnov will be thought of in Russia, but my guess is at this stage he probably thinks that's not the most attractive place to go either, if he was in fact inclined to go hide somewhere. Prosecutors filed additional charges against Smirnov in California since the Vegas-based magistrate judge refused to detain him. Smirnov was arrested on Thursday while he was meeting with his lawyers, which shows he was likely not a flight risk. On the morning of February 22nd, Mr. Smirnov was arrested for a second time on the same charges. Biden's DOJ is now alleging the FBI informant, who was arrested and charged, is actively peddling new lies that could impact U.S. elections after he's actively telling about the money that was going on with the Bidens. And so they're saying he's doing this to influence the election, but he's just disseminating the data that he was contracted with the FBI to get. So don't work with the FBI. Because if it's not going to work out for them, or they're trying to keep something a secret, they're going to throw you under the bus, as we saw with Terrence and with this fella. Smirnov was the underlying source of the Biden-Burisma bribery allegations. According to Smirnov, Burisma Holdings founder and Ukrainian oligarch Mykola Zlochevsky told him he paid a total of $10 million in bribes to Hunter and Joe Biden. This is why they're arresting him. There are text messages and audio recordings to back up these claims. Recall that Senator Chuck Grassley last July released the FBI document showing Joe Biden was involved in a $10 million bribery scheme with Burisma CEO Mykola Zlochevsky. The FD 1023 form alleged then Vice President Joe Biden forced Zlochevsky, a Ukrainian oligarch, to pay himself and his son Hunter Biden a total of $10 million. Democrats are using the arrest of Smirnov to torpedo the Biden impeachment inquiry, since House Republicans relied on the Burisma whistleblower documents released by Senator Grassley. But that's not all they relied on. They have a ton of other information. They're acting like this is the only thing they had. Smirnov was rearrested on Thursday. Lawyers for Alexander Smirnov, the former FBI informant charged with feeding the Bureau false corruption allegations against Joe Biden, say he's been rearrested just days after a magistrate let him go. Chesnov said that Smirnov, who prosecutors had warned had extensive ties to Russia. They already said all of this. Anyway, that's where that is. Prosecutors have asked Los Angeles-based U.S. District Judge Otis Wright II to reverse Albright's decision, but Wright has yet to set a hearing. Smirnov's attorneys are asking Wright to immediately call a hearing date in light of their own client's new arrest. So that's where that is. I'm sure that this guy's going to... well, hello there, Tatty. Nice to see you. You're late. We're leaving. It's okay, though. You can watch it on rewind. So that's all I've got for you guys tonight. What a fun night. Those videos were just epic. Definitely go back and watch if you came in at the end, because we have Fannie Willis's testimony and part of Terrence Wade's testimony. And it's just, it's the best television I've seen in a very long time. Programming note for anybody who's joining late. We normally do book club on Wednesday morning at 10:30. We're reading John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men, starting chapter 4. Normally we do that on Wednesday. I have a hospital follow-up appointment I need to go to from where I was in the hospital on Wednesday. So we'll do that either Tuesday or Thursday. I'll put out a notification on Monday and let you know what day. Girls Night Out is on hold for now because Miss Frida and her husband are starting their own realty company, and we'll just kind of get her when we can. I don't have a set schedule for that. The Two Girls, One Ghost gals, Corinne and Sabrina, reached out to me today, and the long form interview I did with them on my near-death experience is not coming out until summer. Because of the way their programming is set up, that's when they've got a slot for it. So when they get ready to do that, I will let you know. And as I have other interviews upcoming, I'll let you know about those so that you can listen or watch. I know a lot of you guys know me or follow me because of my near-death experience. I have a bunch of people who follow me because of all of my COVID teaching that I did and my COVID experience. And then a lot of you just found me because I've been on other shows on Rumble. But that's all I've got for tonight. That's the programming update. Please remember to hit the like button before you leave. We get like a penny per like. And I know that's not a lot, but the likes help us in other ways. They help us get noticed in the algorithm. Also share. I try to be very middle of the road with things. So, I'm not one side or the other. I just want the truth on things. And so a lot of people of different persuasions are able to listen because I'm not beating up on people. And we share a lot of health information. If you want to support the show financially, you can go to the description section below this video. If you're watching on Rumble, it's in the description on YouTube as well. You can donate via Cash App, Venmo, or PayPal, and I appreciate your help there. Helps pay for the show and defer the cost so that I'm not paying for it, which is always nice. Here is 1 penny for Penny. Thank you, Salty Cuban Cracker. I appreciate the like, and I love having Salty Cuban Cracker is one of our youngest viewers, and I very much enjoy having him in the chat and getting his opinions on things that my 53-year-old brain don't know about. And Patty, I'm glad to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. I'm so glad to see you in the chat. That's all I've got for tonight. I'll put up the notification for book club. If you, the other thing, I want to show you guys this because Rumble has added new features. I've not done this on YouTube yet. I'm really neglecting the YouTube channel just because I just hate YouTube. Let me show you this. Okay, let me make sure you can see it. Okay, so let me show you what they've done here. We're going to go to my page. We're going to Nurse Penny. Some of you follow Penny Whitbroat. It's all the same thing. But if you go to Nurse Penny, my main channel, so it all has the same content, but it's actually, I don't know if it's in playlists on Penny Whitbroat. I'll have to look. So if you go to my channel, you see my channel here. You see Nurse Penny down here. You see all videos, live, and then playlists. Click on playlists, and you will see every book that we've read for book club. And so we're right now reading the John Steinbeck, but like you can go into Return of the Gods and all 5, and we do discussion too, all 5 of the readings for the Return of the Gods by Jonathan Connor in there. So you don't have to scroll through to find where the latest one is. They're all in playlists now, which is a new feature with Rumble. So we've got Return of the Gods, the John Steinbeck book of Mice and Men. We just finished John Burke, Imagine the God of Heaven. And my story is actually in chapter 11. And so we read that. We've got the Josiah Manifesto, which was a great, great book. They've all been good. By Jonathan Cahn. So much insight spiritually into this war, the spiritual war that we're in, and explaining it historically about the false gods and stuff. It's really, really a fascinating book. Max Lucado, this was a good little short read. Jesus, the God Who Knows Your Name. People were so touched by that book. I would encourage you to read it. And then we've got The Giver, which is actually a book that's on some high school reading lists, but it is a socialist sort of environment that the main character lives in, and it's supposed to be way better. And it just talks about the realities of that. It's a great book, really well written by Lois Lowry. I think there's 3 or 4 in that series, but we just read that one. And The Velveteen Rabbit. And I know that might seem like a weird choice, but there are so many beautiful life lessons in The Velveteen Rabbit. Marjorie Williams Bianco is just a beautiful writer. Her prose is just, I mean, you can't read that book without being affected. And it brings back such great memories from childhood. And that's one that you could read with your kids, or listen to with your kids. So is The Giver. Jesus, the God Who Knows Your Name, totally fine for kids. The other content's a little bit rough. The Steinbeck book of Mice and Men, if you've never read it, it has a lot of foul language. It has the N-word in it. I prayed about that and about whether to say the N-word or not. And you've not been able to find the auto playlist. You have to be on the website to find it. So you have to go to rumble.com to see the playlist. You can't find it on the app. So that's probably why. If you're watching on your TV, you can't get it there either. You have to go online to get it. So they use the N-word frequently, and I prayed and prayed about whether I wanted to say it or not. They use GD as well, and I just use damn in place of that. They use Jesus Christ. I don't like that. But I have been using Jesus because it is in the book, and I feel icky about that. So, but the book is the book. The other thing is that, so for the N-word, why I decided I was going to say it. I would never say it just to say it. But I think that to not read it to read it the way it's written, as far as that word, would be to deny the vile racism that existed in those times. And there's this big move that we are not supposed to deny racism. So I am just trying to comply with that. And I don't mean that in a smart aleck sort of way. I really mean that. Back in those days, and the guy that they refer to by that awful slur, I think it's important to hear that because it helps us understand the kind of awfulness that Black people in those days lived under, that they would be referred to by such a terrible word. And so I decided to read it because I think it authenticates the Black experience from those days. I think to not say it would be to take away from the horribleness of what they experienced. I think it takes away from the book and the timing of the book. Yeah, I could say nog, but I'm just not going to do that. I think it diminishes it. It would be, to me, it's like if someone is raped, using a different word than rape for it, sexually assaulted. I'm like, no, call it what it is. That person was raped. There's a reason that we have these words that evoke such an emotional response. And it's because, and the reason we use them and we're honest about them is, yeah, I hate the word too. The reason I want to be honest about it and to read it is because those people had to hear it. And why shouldn't you have to hear it? Why shouldn't you have to feel the awfulness of that, of what that man must have gone through to be called that name? So when you listen to that, my theory on why I want to read it, if you feel still that there's a reason I shouldn't do that, send me an email and I'll consider it. I absolutely will, if you've got wisdom that you want to share on that. But those are my reasons for sharing it. It's not to be shocking. It's to be accurate about the time, accurate about what people went through, and to make us feel just a small portion of what it must have felt like to be talked to that way. It had to be awful. And I don't feel right diminishing it. And so if you're a Black person and you feel like there's a reason, or my reasoning is wrong, or you're a white person or whatever color you are, and you feel my reasoning is wrong and that it's destructive at all, please send me an email and I will absolutely consider it. But aside from that, I feel like my reasoning is solid and I really prayed about it. And so I'm going to stick with doing it. I've not had any complaints yet. If I hear something, it'll probably be on YouTube, but if they canceled me, I would consider it an honor. I would mark that up as a pin on my chest of doing something right. But I'm going to pray us out. That's all I've got for tonight. And Salty starts in 18 minutes, and I need some supper. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day and this time together with my podcasting family. I do so love them. Father, for everybody who's reached out needing prayer and that I am actively praying for, I pray that you would answer those prayers and remind people to let me know that the prayer was answered, just for my own encouragement, and so that I can encourage others that the things that we pray about actually come to pass. Father, I just pray for anybody who is experiencing detachment from their family, whether over politics or COVID or whatever it is. I pray that you would bring healing and understanding and compassion to those relationships so that they can be rebuilt. Father, I want to thank you for everybody who supports the show financially and in prayer. It means the world to me. You know what the need is as far as the budget for this show. And I just thank you, God, for inspiring people to help meet that. It just means the world to me, and it takes that cost off of us. And we're very grateful, God, for that. And we pray that you would bless those people, pressed down, shaken together, and running over, for their support of this show and me and the work that I'm doing. Father, most of all, we thank you for Jesus, and it's in his son, and it's in his name we pray. Amen. All right, guys. Grandpa was kind of based. Yeah, I'm sure. I remember my dad using that word. He grew up in near Detroit during the race riots, and it was just a very hard time. And I remember him saying that word, and it just felt so. He's since, of course, come way around on that. But it was common language at the time. It's crazy that was common language. But we can say that about a lot of things. The word retard, it's actually making a comeback. And I've always hated that word because of how viciously it was used against my intellectually disabled brother. And I remember people calling him a dumb retard or a stupid retard. And so that word just, yes, in Flint here. Yeah. So I grew up downriver, in Gibraltar. And anyway, I just remember seeing the hurt in his eyes every time, and still to this day, he hurts over those curses that were used against him. And so, yes, I can relate to how those words hurt people. And I'm so glad that we don't use them. I hate that they even use them in songs. I hate that anybody, a lot of Black folks will use that word, and I know that their reasoning there, and who am I to question anyone's reasoning, but their reasoning is they're taking the power back that was taken from them by the use of that word, by using it themselves. And like I said, who am I to question anyone's reasoning. You're actually from Montrose, north of Flint. I'm not familiar with that area. So Don's from, babe, he's not in there. I can't think of it. Southwest, what is it? Blissfield. He's from the Blissfield area. So he's from Blissfield. I grew up near Monroe. Gibraltar's near Monroe. So we grew up about 30 miles away from each other. Of course, never met. He's 10 years older than me, so it would have never worked because I was so much younger. But we ended up meeting here in Kentucky through Plenty of Fish. It's a funny story. I'll tell it sometime. Cleo, Montrose, I don't know any of those names. Isn't that funny? I don't know the Flint area at all. We went up a couple years ago when we were working on Don's parents' house after they passed. We took a weekend and went up to Port Huron. What a great weekend that was. There was a sailboat race there. We got to see that. Great, great little town. The water was so flipping cold, and I think we were there in July. Exit before Birch Run Outlet. That I know. That's funny that I know that. But anyway, Port Huron's a great city. And another city in Michigan, if you've never been to it, is Charlevoix. Charlevoix. Charlevoix has hobbit houses, and it's just the coolest little city. And and another town would be Holland. If you've never gone to Holland, Michigan, they have the Tulip Festival. It's coming up. What is it, in March, I think? I'm going to have to make Don take me up there for a weekend because he promised me I could see the Tulip Festival this weekend. And then there's Frankenmuth, which is this German village. There's all kinds of really cool stuff to do in Michigan. So if you've not been up there, it's a great place to visit. You've got all the lakes, tons of water sports. Is Flint the city that had poisoned water? Salty Cuban cracker, yes. I believe they still have poisoned water. There's also a lot of lead in the water in Detroit. I half wonder about these inner city areas that have all this lead in the water. What is that doing to people? You know, it might be a lot of the reason for educational difficulties and issues with violence, you know, that affects neurological development. It's terrible that they have not fixed that. It's just criminal. I'm like, you can give a $10,000 gift card to people who are here legally. I mean, I want to be helpful, but I mean, come on, you've got people in Flint drinking poison water. It's just crazy. Chicago too. I think Chicago had a story about that not too long ago. You know, Detroit's got dangerous water. And it's just crazy. That is embarrassing that we live in a country where it is dangerous for people to drink from the tap. We live in Kentucky. I don't drink tap water. I have my Alexa Pro water filter back there. I run it through the water filter. Then before I drink it, I've got my little, if you guys watch Red Pill 78, Zach does a lot. One of Zach's sponsors is a company that makes chlorine dioxide, different from chlorine bleach. And so I run it through my filter. Then I do 1 drop of the chlorine dioxide, 1 drop of the activator. You mix it together in a little plastic spoon, and then stir it into the glass. And that kills anything else that would possibly be left. That can be used if you're out camping and you don't have a fresh water source. It will kill all the little heebie-jeebies in the water. Frankenmuth, I love Frankenmuth. Also the, what is it up there in the UP? The island with the, help me, the island with the big, huge hotel that was in the movie, Somewhere in Time. What is the name of that? What is the name of that? It's called, somebody from Michigan here is going to know. Salty says, I drink from tap water. I'm accustomed to dirty water. We're not talking dirty water. We're talking poisonous water. We're talking fluoride, lead. You know, you can get over some bacteria and viruses. These things are neurologically destructive to the brain. And bottled Mackinac, thank you, Mackinac Island. Bottled water is just tap water from other cities. So we have a water filter and we filter. Yes, if you've never been to Mackinac Island, Don and I took a trip out there, took the ferry across. There's no cars on Mackinac Island if you're not familiar with it. Beautiful, beautiful island. Everybody gets around. There's a couple emergency, yes, dirty versus poison, very different things. You know, you get a little infection and a wound, I can clear that up with an antibiotic. You get bitten by a snake, whole different problem. And I'm not saying there's snake venom in the water. I know Dr. Artis says that. Take doctor very loosely there. There's not snake venom in your water. Filter. Yeah, I have the Alexa Pure filter, which is supposed to filter out. I think you have to use reverse osmosis to get fluoride out, but it would filter out all the other stuff. And then I just leave it set. It doesn't even come out smelling like chlorine after. Our water usually has that strong smell. But I put it in a container that's got a little opening on it. So if there is any chlorine left in it, it can off gas. Not the chlorine dioxide, that's different. Just the chlorine that's naturally in the water. But anyway, that's all I've got for tonight. I'll put an update up on Monday, maybe even tomorrow, letting you know what day I've decided to do book club. And then we'll go back to our regular Wednesday schedule. It's just because it's this week. Yeah, I think for the Alexa Pro, so I don't know if you can see this. Do you see the refrigerator back there? And then to the left of the fridge, or maybe it's to the right by the way you guys are watching, there's like another stainless steel tall round container, cylindrical container. That's the purifier. You just take the lid off the top, dump a bunch of water in, then it goes through filters into the bottom chamber, and then you drink out of it, and the water tastes really, really good. Definitely worth the money. I can really tell the difference in, like you could give me 3 different kinds of bottled water, and I could tell you that they were 3 different kinds of bottled water. If you gave me 3 of the same, I could tell you they were the same. I couldn't tell you which brand. But I'd be like, nope, this is a different brand. This is a different brand. I really can taste it. Please do a what? Angela, welcome. You're new in the chat. We're glad to have you. I hope you didn't just get here because we're fixing to leave. We're fixing to leave, honey. We're almost done. Please do a meditation with us. Oh, I'll have to think of, I don't do meditations. I just pray. So we already did that. I mean, meditation and prayer are basically the same thing in my mind. Unless you're talking about like a guided visual meditation where I would read something to you. But that's what I'm doing with prayer, just out of my own spirit, my own heart. All right, guys, that's all I've got for you. I love you whole big bunches. Don't forget of Mice and Men Book Club. And I'll get the notification up for that in the next couple of days. Oh, wait. You're from India. Prayers are fabulous. I will check the replay. Well, awesome. And welcome to you. That's cool. I love it when we get people from around the world. Love having a diverse group. All right, guys. Love you whole big bunches. Nurse Penny, out.